Imagine, if you will, that you are standing on a hill overlooking the city of Florence in the late 14th century. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of stone dust, cedarwood, and the distant rhythmic tolling of cathedral bells. The sun is dipping below the horizon, painting the Tuscan sky in hues of amber and bruised violet. You are here to witness a quiet turning point in human history. Not a sudden explosion of change, but a slow rhythmic heartbeat, a reawakening. For centuries the world had been wrapped in the thick, heavy blankets of the medieval era. It was a time of shadows, of rigid structures, and of looking toward the heavens to escape the hardships of the earth. But here, in the heart of Italy, something is shifting. The fog is lifting. Men and women are beginning to look at the world and at themselves, with eyes wide open for the first time in an age. They are reaching back into the past, to the marble ruins of Rome, to the philosophical whispers of ancient Greece, to find the blueprints for a new way of being. You feel a profound sense of peace as we step through this doorway into the Renaissance. This is not a story of conquest or steel, it is a story of light, of human curiosity, and of the limitless capacity of the mind to reshape reality. As the stars begin to emerge above the terracotta rooftops, feel the tension of your day slowly unraveling. Let your breath become slow and steady, matching the pace of a world that is rediscovering beauty. You are safe here, drifting on the tide of history, where we explore how art, power, and the quiet genius of the individual transformed our ancestors' world, and ultimately our own. The channel Sleepy History with Kevin is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. As you settle deeper into the quietude of this journey, picture the bustling streets of Florence not as a museum of the past, but as a living, breathing laboratory of human potential. By the early 1400s, this city had become the heartbeat of a transformation. It was a place where merchants travelled from the far corners of the known world, their ships laden with silk, spices, and, more importantly, ideas. The air in the marketplace was thick with the chatter of different tongues, a symphony of commerce that laid the foundation for something far more durable than gold, the exchange of knowledge. Why here? Why Florence? It was a confluence of geography and fortune. The city sat at a crossroads of trade routes, nestled in the protective embrace of the Tuscan hills. Prosperity flowed through the Arno River like a lifeblood, and with that wealth came a radical shift in perspective. For the first time in centuries, the focus began to drift away from the singular, overarching weight of survival. People, the elite, the guildsmen, the thinkers began to ask questions that had long remained dormant. They looked at the ruins of the Roman aqueducts and the remnants of marble columns and wondered, how did they do it? How did they capture the strength of the human spirit in stone? This was the dawn of humanism, a quiet revolution of the mind. It was not a rejection of faith, but an expansion of it. Thinkers began to argue that to understand the world was to understand the Creator who made it. They dusted off ancient scrolls, translating works by Plato and Cicero, finding in them a mirror for their own desires to learn, to grow, and to create. You can feel this atmosphere if you close your eyes, the scratch of a quill on parchment in a dimly lit study, the smell of fresh plaster in a workshop, the quiet murmur of a lecture in a garden. It was a time of immense intellectual hunger. As we walk these narrow, winding streets, notice how the city itself seems to be waking up. The architecture is changing. The heavy, fortress-like structures of the past are giving way to more elegant, balanced designs. Columns are once again rising to support arches that echo the majesty of a lost empire. This was not just about building houses, it was about building a framework for a new civilization. Every stone laid was a statement of confidence. The people of Florence were beginning to believe that the potential of man was not fixed or predetermined, but fluid, capable of reaching towards the heavens, not through austerity, but through the mastery of art, science, and intellect. Listen closely to the rhythm of the city. There is an undercurrent of ambition here, but it is a soft, productive ambition. It is the ambition of a clockmaker perfecting a gear, or a weaver ensuring the thread is tight. It is the ambition of a society that has decided, collectively, that the era of darkness is ending, and that a new, radiant light of understanding is beginning to dawn. Let this realization wash over you. Just as Florence transitioned from a medieval commune to a beacon of innovation, allow your own mind to transition from the chaos of the present into the structured, purposeful beauty of this history. You are merely an observer here, a traveller through time, witnessing the very first ripples of a wave that would eventually wash over all of Europe. As we move deeper into the fabric of Renaissance Florence, we must turn our gaze toward a name that echoes through the halls of history like a soft, persistent chime: the Medici. Imagine a family who understood that true power was not merely the possession of gold, but the ability to shape the soul of a city. They were bankers, yes, men of ledgers, accounts, and calculations, but they were also the silent architects of a dream. Cosimo de' Medici, sitting in his private library, surrounded by ancient manuscripts brought from across the seas, viewed his wealth as a tool for a higher purpose. He understood that a city is defined not by the walls that protect it, but by the beauty that emanates from within it. Think of the relationship between the patron and the artist as a quiet, sacred contract. The Medici did not just commission paintings, they fostered an environment where genius could breathe. They sought out the young, the restless, and the visionary. They invited philosophers to sit at their dinner tables and architects to map out the skyline of Florence. They understood that by supporting the arts, they were not just indulging in luxury, they were anchoring their own names into the bedrock of eternity. It was a strategy of soft power, one that relied on the cultivation of taste and the elevation of human achievement. In the courtyards of their palaces, where fountains murmured and marble busts of Roman philosophers stood in solemn contemplation, a new kind of social fabric was being woven. It was here that the boundaries between social classes began to blur. A poet might share a conversation with a prince, an artist might debate the mechanics of perspective with a scholar. The Medici provided the stage, the lighting, and the audience, and in doing so, they turned Florence into the greatest classroom on earth. Consider the impact of this patronage on the individual artist. Before this, the craftsman was often viewed as a labourer, someone who merely worked with his hands. But under the protection and encouragement of families like the Medici, the artist began to emerge as a thinker, a philosopher in his own right. The status of the creator was elevated. When you look at the works that were born from this era, the soft, diffused light of a fresco, the intricate detail of a carved marble fold, you are seeing the result of a partnership between immense wealth and divine imagination. Let the weight of your own responsibilities drift away as you contemplate this era of stewardship. Like the Medici, who looked beyond the horizon to see what could be built for future generations, you too are crafting your own legacy with every choice you make. The quiet, methodical process of gathering resources, of supporting the growth of others, and of fostering an environment where ideas can flourish, these are the timeless virtues that the Renaissance reminds us of. As the flickering candlelight reflects off the heavy leather-bound books in a Medici study, feel the stillness of this moment. You are witnessing the birth of a world where beauty is not a luxury, but a necessity, and where the human spirit is given the space it needs to truly unfold. As the influence of the Medici spreads, a new generation of creators steps into the light, forever altering the way we perceive our existence. Imagine walking through a sun-drenched studio in late 15th century Florence. The floor is strewn with parchment scraps, anatomical sketches of muscles and bones, and mathematical diagrams that seek to map the very geometry of the soul. Here sits Leonardo da Vinci, a man whose curiosity acts as a tether between the seen and the unseen. He does not merely paint, he investigates. For Leonardo, an artist must be a scientist, a philosopher, and an observer of the minutest details in the natural world. Think of the way light strikes a leaf, or how the ripple of water mimics the flow of air. These were the things that occupied the mind of the master. He understood that to paint the human form with truth, one must understand what lies beneath the skin. He looked at the world not as a collection of static objects, but as a dynamic, living system. This pursuit of sfumato, that soft, smoky transition between colours, was his way of capturing the fluidity of life itself. He taught the world to see that there are no hard lines in nature, only subtle gradations of light and shadow, much like the changing moods within our own minds as we drift toward rest. Alongside him, others were exploring the architecture of space. Through the discovery of linear perspective, artists began to create windows onto infinite worlds. They placed a single vanishing point on the canvas, a focal point that pulled the viewer's eye deep into the painting, creating a sense of three-dimensional depth that felt so real one could almost step through the frame. This was a revolution in perception. It meant that the individual human eye was now the center of the universe. The viewer was no longer a passive observer of a religious icon. They were an active participant in a shared space of beauty and logic. Feel the quiet precision of these masters. There is no rush in their work, only the steady, patient unfolding of an idea. Whether they are grinding pigments from rare minerals or debating the mathematical proportions of the golden ratio, they are driven by a singular, calm desire to bring order to chaos. They are finding the patterns that underpin the beauty of the world. As you listen, let this dedication to precision become your own. Allow your mind to clear, focusing on the intricate details of your own thoughts, smoothing out the edges of your day, just as a master painter smooths the surface of a canvas. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Kevin, are fictional, thoughtfully crafted around historical themes and inspired by real events, figures, and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The content does not represent real individuals, actual events, but documented cases. Any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. As we continue our journey, we find ourselves standing before a massive, unhewn block of Carrara marble. It is silent, cold, and heavy with potential. Beside it stands Michelangelo, a man who viewed his work not as an act of creation, but as an act of liberation. He once said that every block of stone contains a statue within it, and that his task was simply to chip away the excess material to set the figure free. This is the essence of the High Renaissance, a profound belief that beauty is already present in the world, waiting for the patient, steady hand to reveal it. Think of the physical discipline required for such a task. Hour after hour, the rhythmic tink-tink of the chisel against the stone echoes through the workshop. It is a meditative, repetitive sound, one that requires absolute focus and complete surrender to the process. There is no room for haste. Each strike of the mallet is a calculated decision, a breath taken, a moment of deep, silent concentration. For Michelangelo, this was a spiritual exercise, a way to bridge the gap between the earthly realm of stone and the divine realm of human emotion. His figures do not just stand, they strain, they contemplate, they dream, they possess a latent energy, a muscular tension that captures the very struggle of being human. As you listen to the rhythmic echoes of the chisel, allow yourself to mirror that patience. We live in a world that often demands speed, yet the most enduring works, those that define the legacy of humanity, are always born from the slow, deliberate unfolding of time. Whether you are building a career, nurturing a relationship, or simply working on your own inner peace, remember the lesson of the sculptor. Sometimes your most important work is not adding more to your life, but gently removing the distractions, the worries, and the unnecessary noise that prevent your true self from emerging. If you are finding peace in these stories of creation and history, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. By joining our community, you support the quiet art of storytelling and ensure that these journeys through time can continue to provide a space for reflection and inspiration for all of us. Your presence here, in this shared moment of learning, is what turns these historical echoes into a living conversation. Let the image of the sculptor guide you now. The stone is being shaped, the excess is falling away, and beneath the surface your own mind is becoming clearer, quieter, and more serene. You are the architect of your own evening, carving out a space for rest and rejuvenation. The heavy block of the day's stress is becoming lighter with every breath, leaving behind only the solid, beautiful core of your own inner stillness. If Michelangelo was the voice of the thunderous struggle, then Raphael was the whisper of celestial harmony. Imagine stepping into a light-filled gallery where the walls are adorned with works that seem to breathe with an effortless, rhythmic grace, while others wrestled with the raw intensity of the human form. Raphael sought to capture the perfection of balance. He understood that the human eye naturally yearns for symmetry, for a sense of order that mirrors the quiet perfection of the heavens. In his compositions, every figure is placed with a deliberate, gentle precision. Nothing is out of place, nothing is straining. It is as if the scene has been held in a state of perfect, frozen composure for eternity. Consider the way he arranged his subjects. There is a flowing, circular movement to his paintings that draws your gaze from one point to another in a continuous, soothing loop. He did not seek to shock or to challenge, he sought to comfort and to inspire. In an age of shifting political power and the rising tides of philosophical debate, Raphael's work acted as a sanctuary, a place where the viewer could find a moment of stillness and order. He bridged the gap between the earthly and the divine with a softness that makes the viewer feel like a guest in a holy yet deeply human realm. Think about the colours he chose, luminous, warm and inviting, the soft blues of the sky, the gentle ochres of the earth, and the rich flowing robes that drape over his figures as if moved by a summer breeze. Everything is designed to settle the heart. When you look at his work, notice how your breathing begins to sync with the composition. You start to find a balance within yourself, mirroring the balance on the canvas. The tension in your shoulders fades, replaced by a sense of ease that radiates outward from your center. This is the beauty of the High Renaissance at its peak, the discovery that art could be a mirror for the soul's desire for peace. Raphael taught us that complexity can be made simple and that truth can be found in the beauty of proportion. As the day draws to a close and the world outside grows darker, let these images of harmony linger in your mind. Imagine yourself standing in that same quiet gallery, bathed in the soft golden light of his paintings. Feel the layers of your day, the hurried conversations, the unfinished tasks, the restless thoughts, all settling into a state of perfect symmetrical repose. There is a profound lesson here that you too can cultivate this sense of Raphaelesque balance in your own life. It is not about reaching for perfection in everything you do, but about finding the right rhythm for your own existence. It is about placing the elements of your life in a way that allows you to move through the world with grace rather than friction. As you continue to listen, let the chaos of the world outside fall away, leaving only the steady, beautiful architecture of your own peaceful awareness. You are balanced, you are centered, and you are ready to drift even deeper into the history of this remarkable age. As the sun of the Renaissance reached its zenith in the heart of Italy, its warm glow began to stretch across the Alps, reaching toward the northern reaches of Europe. Imagine the mountain passes, once treacherous and isolating, now becoming arteries of exchange. Merchants travelling with caravans of goods, fine textiles, exotic spices, and intricate glassware also carried something far more precious, the seeds of a new way of thinking. These were carried in the minds of travellers, in the pages of handwritten manuscripts, and in the quiet, profound conversations held in the inns along the Rhine. The Renaissance was never meant to be contained within a single border. Ideas, much like the changing seasons, have a way of drifting where they are needed most. In the north, this influence merged with local traditions, creating a beautiful synthesis. Think of the great trade cities like Bruges or Antwerp, where the wealth of commerce met the northern appetite for detail and realism. Artists in the north began to adopt the techniques of their Italian counterparts, yet they applied them with a unique, meticulous focus on the natural world, the texture of a velvet cloak, the reflection of light in a glass of water, the subtle expression on a peasant's face. It was a quieter, more domestic kind of observation, yet it was driven by the same spirit of curiosity. It was during this time that the world truly began to shrink. The invention of the printing press acted as a catalyst, a quiet revolution that allowed thoughts to travel further and faster than ever before. Imagine the sound of the wooden press, a steady, rhythmic pulse that echoed across the continent. Pages were produced with a speed that once would have taken a scribe a lifetime to replicate. Suddenly, knowledge was no longer the exclusive property of the elite or the cloistered. A scholar in a small university town in Germany could read the words of a philosopher in Florence. A merchant's daughter could study the geometry of perspective. This democratization of information meant that the Renaissance was no longer just a trend of the aristocracy. It was becoming a conversation of the people. Feel the vast, interconnected nature of this expansion. As you drift, imagine yourself as one of those travelers on the mountain path, carrying a lantern to light the way. You are part of this great unfolding story, a witness to the moment when human consciousness began to stretch its wings. The world is becoming more complex, more vibrant, and more aware of its own possibilities. The boundaries that once defined the limits of the known world are softening, fading into the periphery, allowing you to see further than you ever have before. Let this sense of expansion wash over you. Just as the ideas of the Renaissance crossed the snow-dusted peaks of the Alps to bring new life to the northern lands, allow your own thoughts to transcend the limitations of your immediate surroundings. You are not bound by the present moment. You are connected to a long, enduring lineage of human discovery. With every slow, deliberate breath, feel your perspective widening, your mind opening to the endless landscapes of history, and your spirit resting in the quiet, profound realization that you are part of a larger, beautiful tapestry of human life that continues to weave its way through the centuries. As the intellectual currents flowed across Europe, they settled into the quiet, cloistered gardens of the mind. Imagine a summer afternoon in a secluded courtyard, where the only sounds are the rustle of leaves and the occasional gentle turning of a parchment page. This is the habitat of the Renaissance humanist, a thinker who no longer looks at the world as a place of suffering to be endured, but as a garden to be cultivated. They sat in these tranquil spaces, debating the nature of the soul, the meaning of liberty, and the profound responsibility of the individual to contribute to the collective good. These thinkers were not trying to dismantle the past, but to reconcile it with the present. They looked at the great thinkers of antiquity, Plato, Seneca, Cicero, and found in their words a blueprint for a life of purpose. They argued that a human being was not just a cog in a machine of tradition, but a center of agency and creativity. This was the birth of the Renaissance man, the individual who sought to develop their mind, body, and spirit in equal measure. To be well read, to appreciate music, to understand the stars, to act with civic duty, these were the pillars of a life well lived. Consider the depth of this shift. For the first time, individuals began to internalize the idea that their personal growth was, in itself, a service to the world. They wrote essays that questioned the nature of power, explored the intricacies of human emotion, and celebrated the unique beauty of the lived experience. It was a philosophy of potential. It suggested that if we sharpen our minds and refine our hearts, we are capable of uncovering the hidden truths of the universe. They did not have all the answers, but they had the courage to ask the right questions. As you lean into this quiet contemplation, realize that you are participating in this same ancient tradition. By taking this time to learn, to listen, and to reflect on the history of human thought, you are honoring that same spark of curiosity that drove those early humanists. Your pursuit of knowledge, no matter how quiet or personal, is a continuation of that light. If this exploration of history and the philosophy of the human spirit resonates with you, we invite you to become a more active part of this journey. Subscribing to Sleepy History with Kevin is a small gesture, but it helps us grow and continue to curate these peaceful educational experiences. We also encourage you to leave a comment below sharing what part of the Renaissance or what historical figure brings you the most curiosity. Your engagement allows us to craft even more meaningful stories for your moments of rest. Let these ideas settle into the stillness of your mind. You are exploring the very foundations of how we define ourselves, how we view our potential, and how we interact with the world around us. In this space of quiet reflection, there is no pressure to solve the problems of the world. There is only the opportunity to appreciate the dignity of your own existence. Allow the thoughts of the philosophers to become your own, soothing and steady as you drift further into the calm, deep waters of this historical narrative. While scholars debated in gardens and masters perfected their frescoes, the heart of the Renaissance truly beat in the rhythm of daily life. Let us step away from the grand halls and walk the cobblestone streets as the twilight deepens. Imagine the smell of warm bread wafting from a neighborhood bakery, mingling with the scent of lavender and damp stone. Here, life was a tapestry of craftsmanship and quiet persistence. The tailor stitching a fine velvet tunic, the apothecary grinding herbs into soothing balms, and the apprentice learning to mix the perfect pigment. Each individual was a thread in this grand unfolding transformation. Observe the interior of a typical household. It is a space defined by both utility and an emerging sense of aesthetic comfort. The walls, once bare, might now be graced with a small printed leaf of poetry or a modest sketch. A simple wooden table is set with care, illuminated by the steady golden flicker of beeswax candles. There is a newfound appreciation for the home as a sanctuary, a place where one could retreat from the noise of the market and the complexities of the world to find restoration. This was the Renaissance on a personal scale, the decision to make one's surroundings a reflection of beauty and order. Even in the most mundane tasks, there was an underlying sense of pride and curiosity. A mother teaching her child to read, a craftsman experimenting with a new tool, a neighbor sharing a conversation about the changing tides of local politics. These were the small human moments that gave the era its substance. The Renaissance was not just a collection of great names, it was a collective shift in how ordinary people viewed their own potential. They began to realize that their labor had value, that their thoughts were worth recording, and that their lives, however quiet, were part of a larger, evolving story. Feel the texture of this world as you drift, the rough stone underfoot, the softness of woven wool, the gentle warmth of the hearth. There is a profound sense of safety in this everyday reality. The challenges of the era, the scarcity, the uncertainty, were met with a spirit of resilience that feels strikingly familiar. As you reflect on their lives, let the busyness of your own world mirror theirs, but soften it. Just as the streets of Florence quieted at the end of the day, allow your own mind to slow its pace. Think of how they might have felt at the end of a long day's work, resting their hands, looking out at the stars, and feeling the quiet satisfaction of a task well attended. That same peace is available to you now. There is no need to rush, no need to carry the weight of the day into this space of rest. You're observing a past that is filled with the same humanity, the same hopes, and the same need for stillness that you feel tonight. Allow the simplicity of their lives to anchor you, grounding your thoughts in a calm, steady rhythm of existence. As the candles in these imaginary homes flicker low, let your own awareness dim, moving toward the soft, inviting shadows of deep, restorative rest. As we wander further into the landscape of the Renaissance, we find ourselves drawn toward the sky. Architecture during this period was more than just engineering. It was a prayer in stone. Think of the massive domes rising above the city skylines, like great stone flowers unfurling toward the sun. These structures were designed not merely to contain space, but to manipulate light and sound, creating an atmosphere that invited the soul to expand. To stand beneath such a vast curved ceiling is to feel both incredibly small and intimately connected to the infinite. It is a space designed to quiet the mind through the sheer power of harmony and proportion. And as the architecture reached for the heavens, the music filled that space with a new, complex beauty. The development of polyphony, the weaving together of multiple independent melodic lines, mirrored the complexity of the era itself. Imagine the resonance of a choir in a grand cathedral, separate voices, each with its own rhythm and depth, yet perfectly aligned in a grand, soaring chord. It was a sonic representation of the Renaissance ideal, individual parts contributing to a singular, harmonious whole. This music was designed to lift the spirit, to create a sense of vertical movement, drawing the listener upward, away from the dust of the earth, and into the realm of pure, abstract peace. These spaces and these sounds were the Renaissance's gift of atmosphere. They taught people that the environment they inhabit directly shapes the quality of their inner life. When the architecture is balanced, when the music is harmonious, the mind naturally follows suit. It is a lesson in the architecture of your own consciousness. Just as the architects calculated every arch and column to support the weight of the dome, you can cultivate the structures of your own thoughts to support a state of profound, restful peace. As you sit here in this quiet, allow the imaginary music to wash over you, a soft, multi-layered tapestry of sound that wraps you in a cocoon of tranquility. If you have found solace in this exploration of how art, space, and music can quiet the soul, please consider taking a moment to support this channel. A simple like on this video helps others find their way to this space of reflection, and by sharing your thoughts in the comments, you help us continue to build this community of seekers and dreamers. Your support is the very foundation that allows these stories to be told. Feel the resonance of this harmony within your own chest. Your breath is becoming the steady, pulsing rhythm of the music. Your thoughts are the delicate, interlocking melodies that have nowhere to go and nothing to do but exist in this moment of perfect balance. There is no urgency here, only the grand, slow rotation of the spheres. You are resting in a cathedral of your own making, surrounded by the echoes of a golden age, perfectly still, perfectly calm, and drifting deeper into the soft embrace of a night that is filled with grace. As our journey deepens into the quiet hours, we find our gaze turning from the earth toward the infinite tapestry of the night sky. The Renaissance was not only a revival of art and beauty, it was a profound awakening of the scientific mind. Imagine a scholar in the late quiet of his study, turning a brass telescope toward the moon. For generations the heavens were considered untouchable, perfect, and unchanging, a realm reserved for the divine. But now the spirit of inquiry is emboldened. Men and women are beginning to look through the lens of logic, mapping the movements of the planets, charting the stars, and daring to ask if the universe might be governed by laws that the human mind is capable of understanding. Think of the patience required for this kind of observation. It is a slow, methodical study of the night, night after night, recording the subtle shifts in the positions of celestial bodies. There is no instant gratification in such a pursuit. There is only the steady devotion to truth. This was a quiet, internal shift, a move from accepting the world as it was told to them, to observing the world as it actually is. It was a movement of liberation, freeing humanity from the weight of ancient assumptions and inviting them to participate in the discovery of the physical reality around them. The impact of this shift was profound. It turned the universe into a place of wonder rather than a place of mystery to be feared. The stars were no longer mere static points of light, they were participants in a vast, mechanical, and beautiful system. This realization gave rise to a deep sense of humility as the boundaries of the known world expanded, with explorers charting the seas and astronomers mapping the heavens. The human perspective began to evolve. We began to understand our place in the grand design, not as the center of everything, but as a small, conscious part of a much larger, interconnected whole. Feel the vastness of this perspective as you rest. Just as those early astronomers felt the awe of the infinite, you can feel the expanse of your own mind. The complexities of your day, the tasks, the worries, the schedules are small when held against the backdrop of the stars. In this quiet, let your mind become as open and as curious as those who first dared to look up and wonder. You are not required to hold all the answers. You are only required to be present, to be aware, and to be gentle with yourself as you navigate the mysteries of your own experience. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. Let the image of the starlit sky fill your vision. Each light above is a beacon of human curiosity, a testament to the fact that we have always sought to understand, to reach, and to grow. The cool air of the night flows over you, bringing with it a sense of deep, cosmic calm. Everything is in its place. The earth moves in its orbit, the stars remain in their stations, and you in this moment are perfectly at rest. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, mirroring the quiet closure of the day, as you drift further into a state of profound, peaceful stillness, connected to the history of those who dreamed of the stars long before us. As we move toward the quiet conclusion of our journey, it is worth pausing to consider where all this effort, all this genius, and all this beauty has gone. It is easy to think of the Renaissance as a finished chapter in a heavy history book, a time that ended as decisively as the turning of a page. But history is never truly finished. It lives on in the invisible architecture of our modern lives. The very idea that you are a person of worth, capable of shaping your own future through curiosity and creativity, that is a seed planted by the Renaissance, and it continues to grow within you, even in the quietest moments of your rest. Think of the way we value the individual today, the belief that your unique perspective, your interests, and your ability to learn are things to be nurtured. This was the revolutionary thought that sparked the transformation in Florence centuries ago. We see the legacy of the Renaissance in every classroom, every laboratory, every artist's studio, and every quiet moment of self-reflection. Whenever you decide to pick up a book, to learn a new skill, or to look at a familiar sight with fresh, appreciative eyes, you are participating in that same ancient act of rebirth. The masters we have walked with tonight, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, were not just men of their time, they were explorers of the human condition. They proved that the gap between the mundane and the divine can be bridged by the bridge of imagination. They showed us that beauty is not a distraction from reality, but a way to engage with it more deeply. And that lesson remains just as relevant today. In a world that is often fast-paced and fragmented, the ability to find a moment of stillness, to appreciate a detail, to foster an inner life, these are the most modern of skills. As you drift deeper into this twilight, feel the continuity of the human spirit. The ancestors who laboured over marble, who mixed pigments, and who traced the paths of the planets are not so different from you. They too knew the exhaustion of the day, the need for quiet, and the longing for meaning. They, like you, were trying to make sense of the world, one thoughtful action at a time. The thread of their history is woven into the present, providing a foundation of wisdom that you can rest upon whenever you need to find your centre. Let go of the need to understand the entire story all at once. The beauty of history is that it is a dialogue that never stops. Your own life is a continuation of that narrative, a small but essential chapter being written in the quiet of this night. You are the custodian of all that has come before, and the architect of all that is to come. For now there is only the present, the soft rhythmic pace of your breathing, the warmth of your space, and the peaceful assurance that you are exactly where you need to be. The story continues, it unfolds, it breathes, and you are, and always will be, a part of it. As we delve into the deeper, quieter currents of this journey, consider the art of letting go. We often think of the Renaissance as a period of immense acquisition, of new knowledge, new wealth, and new discoveries. But the true masters of the age understood that to see something clearly, one must also know what to release. Just as a painter must decide which brushstrokes to omit to achieve the perfect composition, we too must learn to release the excess weight we carry within our own minds. Think of this as the final essential step in your own personal renaissance, the act of unburdening. Imagine the sculptor standing before the stone one last time, not to carve but to step back. The work is done, the tension of the chisel, the labour of the planning, the intensity of the vision, all of it is now released. There is a profound meditative silence that follows the completion of a masterpiece. It is in this silence that the beauty of the work truly resonates. If you're holding on to the fragments of your day, the lists, the expectations, the lingering questions, gently allow them to drift away, just as the dust of the stone settles to the floor. They no longer serve you here, in this quiet, protected space of rest. There is a liberation in this surrender. The humanists spoke often of otium, a state of noble, productive leisure. It was not laziness, but a deliberate setting aside of the burdens of public life to nourish the inner self. It was the understanding that you cannot be a vessel for inspiration if you are already full of the day's noise. By letting go, you create the space for something new, something calmer, and something more authentic to emerge. You are not losing anything. You are clearing the path for the quiet wisdom that resides within you to finally be heard. Feel the muscles in your body soften one by one, the tension around your eyes, the weight in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest. All of it is dissolving with every exhale. Imagine the day's concerns loosening their grip. You are becoming lighter, more fluid, more at peace. Like the sfumato technique we discussed earlier, where the sharp lines of reality soften into a haze of light and shadow, your awareness is becoming soft, unfocused, and serene. There is no need to maintain a structure or a plan tonight. The universe, in all its vast and ancient geometry, is turning perfectly well without your intervention. Rest in this state of gentle release. You are part of an unbroken chain of human experience, a cycle of striving and resting, of waking and sleeping. The history we have shared tonight is now a soft, comforting presence around you, a library of stories, a gallery of light, a symphony of ideas that you can drift through without effort. You have travelled through time, witnessed the birth of a new world, and now you are returning home to the quiet sanctuary of your own consciousness. Stay here in this space of release, where the only thing that matters is the steady rhythmic rise and fall of your breath, and the deep restorative peace that follows every moment of letting go. We have arrived at a place where history meets the threshold of sleep. Think of it as the quiet terrace of a Florentine villa at the very end of a long golden summer day. The stones are still warm beneath your feet, retaining the heat of a sun that has long since set. The cicadas are humming a low, steady song in the cypress trees, a sound that mirrors the steady beat of your own heart. Everything you have heard tonight, the rise of empires, the strokes of the brush, the whispers of the philosophers, has settled into a soft golden dust that coats the surface of your mind. There is no more need to analyze, no need to remember dates or names, no need to decipher the complex movements of the past. Those things have done their work, they have opened the door, and now you may walk through it into the stillness. Imagine the landscape of the Renaissance folding itself up like a beautiful illuminated manuscript. The cathedrals, the libraries, the winding riverbanks, they are all becoming shadows in the distance, gentle and harmless, fading into the peaceful dark. You are safe here in this transition, caught between the wakefulness of the world and the deep restorative currents of the night. Think of the way an artist prepares their canvas with a wash of colour, a neutral, calming tone that provides a foundation for everything else. This is your state of mind right now, a smooth, neutral wash of peace. You are not thinking, you are simply existing. The boundaries between you and the history we have explored are dissolving. You are not a spectator of the past, you are the present embodiment of all that human curiosity has built. The resilience, the creativity, and the quest for beauty that defined those centuries are alive in your very breath. Take a moment to simply appreciate the weight of your body, how it sinks into the softness beneath you. You are anchored, grounded, and utterly supported. The world outside this room continues its rotation, but for now it does not require anything of you. All of your responsibilities, all of your ambitions, all of your to-do lists, they are stored away in a safe, distant place, waiting for the light of another day. Tonight there is only the quiet, there is only the rhythm. There is only the slow, luxurious unravelling of your thoughts as they drift into the velvet blue of the midnight sky. Let the final images of our journey be these: the steady glow of a candle that refuses to flicker, the gentle reflection of the moon on a still pond, and the soft, rhythmic sound of your own breathing. Each breath is a bridge, carrying you further away from the shore of the day and deeper into the vast, calm ocean of rest. You are drifting, turning, settling. The Renaissance was a time of waking up, but now it is time for the soul to dream. Sleep is a master painter, and it is ready to craft the most beautiful silent visions for your mind to inhabit. Everything is exactly as it should be. We stand now at the very edge of the map, where the known world of the Renaissance fades into the soft, shimmering mist of dreams. Imagine yourself walking along a quiet, moonlit corridor in a place that feels both ancient and deeply familiar. The walls are lined with tapestries that seem to shift and sway in a gentle, rhythmic breeze. As you pass, the scenes on the tapestries of busy markets, of painters in their studios, of scholars debating under the stars, slowly lose their definition. They become soft smudges of light and colour, echoing the sfumato style that once captivated the masters of old. It is as if the history we have walked through is folding itself into your own memory, becoming a quiet, comforting backdrop for your dreams. There is a profound stillness here, a silence that is not empty, but full of potential. It is the same silence that Michelangelo sought within the stone, and that Raphael captured in the gaze of his figures. It is a silence that invites you to be entirely yourself, without expectation, without effort. You have travelled far through the corridors of time. You have witnessed the sparks of human genius, and you have carried the warmth of those ideas with you. But now, the journey has fulfilled its purpose. The intellect can rest, the curiosity can be satisfied, the story can be left to wander its own path through the halls of time. Feel the floor beneath you growing soft, the air growing cool and still. Every step you take is lighter than the last, until you are barely moving at all, simply floating in the quiet sanctuary of this moment. The world of form and light is receding, replaced by a gentle velvet darkness that wraps around you like a soft cloak. It is the darkness of the night sky that the astronomers studied, but here it is not a mystery to be solved, it is a cradle to rest in. You are safe, you are held. You're at the very centre of your own private Renaissance, where the only thing that matters is the slow, steady rhythm of your own heart. Allow the last remnants of the day to dissipate. Any words, any images, any lingering thoughts, let them dissolve into the haze. Like a pigment stirred into water, they are becoming one with the atmosphere, thinning until they are nothing but a faint, pleasant memory. You are reaching the point where the distinction between here and there, between then and now, simply ceases to exist. There is only this breath, there is only this softness, there is only the deep, welcoming invitation of the night to let go, to drift and to sleep. The doors of the villa are closed, the candles are dimmed, and the stars are watching over you steady and silent as you transition into the timeless, beautiful realm of your own inner world. As we reach the final horizon of our journey, we must recognize that the Renaissance was not merely a period of time, it was a permanent expansion of the human spirit. It was the moment humanity stood up from its knees, looked at the world and decided that it was a place of infinite possibility. The Renaissance left us with more than just masterpieces of marble and paint. It left us with the conviction that the individual mind is the most powerful tool for shaping reality. Think of the legacy that remains in the air around us. The courage to question the status quo, the drive to push the boundaries of science, and the profound belief that art is essential to the human experience. The transition from the medieval world to the modern age was a journey of shedding fear and embracing curiosity. We see the echoes of the Medici's patronage in the way we support innovation today. We see the precision of Da Vinci's observations in our pursuit of scientific truth. We see the harmony of Raphael in our constant search for balance in a chaotic world. The true peak of this era was the discovery of human agency, the understanding that we are not passive witnesses to history, but active architects of it. Even as we drift into the quiet, we carry this torch forward. Every generation experiences its own renaissance, a period where the old ways of seeing no longer suffice, and a new, more expansive vision must be born. By learning from the figures of the past, we are not just looking back, we are preparing our own minds for the next unfolding of human potential. As the echoes of Florence, the scent of the Tuscan hills, and the rhythmic pulse of the printing press begin to fade, let the core lesson of this history remain, that human curiosity, when guided by beauty and refined by logic, can reshape the very nature of existence. You have walked through the doors of this age, observed its struggles, understood its triumphs, and felt the weight of its transformation. The history of the Renaissance is no longer outside of you, it has become part of the quiet, enduring wisdom of your own mind. The path is clear, the story is written, and the legacy is yours to hold. As you finally let go of the narrative, allow yourself to drift into the deep, dark, and peaceful ocean of the present. The journey through time is complete, but the spirit of discovery, that quiet, persistent human urge to learn, to grow and to create, is something that will never sleep. It is the steady heartbeat of our species, pulsing beneath the surface of every night, and blooming anew with the first light of every tomorrow. While the great masters were painting the walls of cathedrals, another, more quiet revolution was unfolding in the dimly lit backrooms of apothecary shops and the private laboratories of wandering natural philosophers. These were the alchemists, or, as they often preferred to be called, students of nature. To our modern eyes, their work might seem shrouded in myth and superstition, but in the context of the Renaissance, it was a profound systematic attempt to decode the language of the physical world. Imagine a room cluttered with glass retorts, smouldering braziers, and handwritten notes detailing the transmutation of metals and the distillation of herbal essences. This was a time when the boundary between chemistry and philosophy was porous. These thinkers believed that the universe was governed by a hidden order, a set of divine proportions that, if understood, could reveal the secrets of life itself. They spent years grinding minerals, observing the reaction of heat on matter, and documenting the way substances changed form. They were the ancestors of our modern chemists. Their obsession with purification, the idea that one could strip away the impurities of a substance to reach its true, essential nature, was a perfect metaphor for the Renaissance spirit itself. Just as the artist removed the excess stone to reveal the sculpture, the alchemist sought to remove the imperfections of matter to find the gold of hidden truth. Consider the societal impact of this curiosity. It fueled an entire industry of exploration. It drove merchants to seek out new plants, new minerals, and new materials from distant lands. It forced universities to re-evaluate their curriculum, moving away from rigid scholasticism toward an observational model. This was the moment when observation became a virtue. A student of nature was no longer expected to simply read what an ancient authority had written. They were expected to go out into the field, collect samples, perform experiments, and see for themselves. This shift in methodology, the move toward empirical evidence, is the bedrock upon which our modern scientific world is built. Feel the atmosphere of these workspaces. There is a sense of intense, quiet dedication. The alchemist works in solitude, not for fame, but for the thrill of the eureka moment, the realization that the world is far more complex and capable of change than previously imagined. They worked with fire, with glass, and with the patient observation of time. In their struggle to unlock the secrets of the elements, they were mirroring the struggle of the entire Renaissance. the transition from a world of dogma to a world of inquiry. As you settle deeper into this image, think about your own pursuit of truth. We all have our own laboratories, the spaces where we test our ideas, where we refine our understanding of the world, and where we strive to turn the raw experiences of our lives into something refined and valuable. You are, in your own way, a student of nature, constantly observing, constantly learning, and constantly distilling your experiences into wisdom. The work of these Renaissance thinkers continues within you. The fire is still burning, the curiosity is still alive, and the search for the essential truth remains a journey without end. As we delve into the intricate architecture of Renaissance power, we must look beyond the art galleries and into the hushed, candlelit chambers of the diplomats. In an era where a single letter could shift the fate of a principality, the art of statecraft began to mirror the precision of a portraitist. Imagine a map of 15th century Europe, not as a static board of borders, but as a shifting, breathing organism of alliances, marriages, and trade agreements. Power was no longer held solely by the strength of a sword, it was increasingly wielded through the sharpness of a quill and the depth of one's network. This was the birth of modern diplomacy. Before this, emissaries were often temporary messengers sent to demand or threaten. Now the great cities of Italy, Florence, Venice, Milan, began to establish the first permanent embassies. These diplomats were the eyes and ears of their masters, stationed in foreign courts to observe, to analyse, and to influence the subtle tides of political favour. They understood that to govern was to understand the motivations of others. They studied the personal habits of rulers, the internal conflicts of rival noble families, and the economic pressures that drove neighbouring states to act. Consider the complexity of this new political landscape. Every marriage was a treaty, every banquet was a theatre of influence, every carefully worded correspondence was a calculated move in a game of chess played across the continent. It required a new kind of individual, the political strategist. They had to be well versed in history, rhetoric, and law, possessing the grace to navigate the etiquette of royal courts and the cold logic to assess a risk. They were in many ways the Renaissance men of the political sphere, balancing the competing demands of morality and pragmatism. This evolution in statecraft had a profound effect on the average citizen. While the power plays occurred at the highest levels, the resulting stability allowed for the flowering of the very culture we admire today. When a city-state was not in the immediate grip of open conflict, its resources could be diverted into the construction of libraries, the founding of universities, and the patronage of artisans. Diplomacy at its best was a tool for preserving the peace that made the Renaissance possible. It was the realization that the prosperity of one's own people depended on the ability to navigate the ambitions of one's neighbours with wisdom and restraint. As you reflect on this, consider the diplomacy of your own life. We are all constant negotiators, navigating the subtle intersections of our responsibilities, our relationships, and our own goals. Like the Renaissance diplomats, we often find that the most effective way to reach a destination is through patient communication, an understanding of the perspectives of others, and a commitment to the long-term benefit of our community. There is a calm, strategic beauty in this approach, a move away from impulsive reaction toward deliberate, thoughtful engagement. Let your own mind settle into this sense of perspective. You are not a pawn in a chaotic game. You are the strategist of your own evening, calmly managing your internal resources, harmonizing your thoughts, and creating a stable, peaceful environment in which you can finally deeply rest. Let us step away from the political courts and into the hushed, vaulted halls of the universities. By the mid-Renaissance, the very nature of learning was undergoing a seismic shift. For centuries, the academic world had been a landscape of repetition, where the works of a few established authorities were studied with a heavy, unquestioning reverence. It was a closed system, a fortress of logic built upon narrow foundations. But as the Renaissance gathered momentum, a new light began to filter through those high arched windows. A group of thinkers known as the Humanists began to argue that education should not be about training a mind to recite the past, but about equipping it to understand the present. Imagine walking through a university courtyard in the late 15th century. The air is vibrant with a new kind of energy. You hear the passionate debates of scholars who are no longer just focused on theology, but on the classical wisdom of Greece and Rome, the arts of rhetoric, ethics, history, and poetry. They believed that by studying these humanities, one could mould a better citizen, a person capable of critical thought and civic virtue. It was a radical idea that the purpose of education was the cultivation of the whole person. To be truly educated was to be proficient in many areas, to be capable of engaging with the world in a meaningful, multifaceted way. Think of the students of this era, young men and women, filled with a sudden, electrifying hunger for the world. They were devouring the newly translated texts of Plato, Aristotle, and the great poets of antiquity. They were learning to question the nature of the cosmos, the structure of governments, and the morality of human behavior. This was the birth of the liberal arts education, a legacy that remains the backbone of our modern academic world. It taught individuals that their own perspective mattered, that their ability to reason was a gift, and that their contribution to the society around them was a duty. This shift in education did more than just fill shelves with books. It changed the social fabric. It created a class of thinkers, administrators, and artists who could communicate across borders. It bridged the divide between the merchant, the noble, and the cleric. Suddenly, a shared language of ideas began to link the cities of Europe. This common intellectual heritage is what we now call Western culture, and it was forged in these quiet, studious hours, in rooms thick with the scent of aging parchment and the steady flickering light of oil lamps. As you sit in this stillness, think of your own journey of learning. We never truly stop being students. Every time you seek to understand a new perspective, every time you pause to reflect on a difficult question, you are continuing the work of those early humanists. Your mind is a vast open space, much like those grand university halls. It is a place where ideas can gather, where curiosity can be nurtured, and where the wisdom of the past is constantly being re-evaluated for the needs of the present. Feel the quiet power of your own capacity to learn. There is no urgency to know everything tonight. There is only the pleasure of having an open, inquiring mind. Let your thoughts wander through the archives of your own experience, finding connections, drawing insights, and resting in the peaceful realization that you are part of a centuries-long tradition of seeking truth. As the Renaissance mind expanded to encompass the depths of human philosophy and the heights of artistic achievement, it also began to look toward the horizon of the physical world. Imagine the docks of Lisbon, Seville, or Venice during these transformative years. The air is thick with the brine of the ocean, the scent of hemp ropes, and the excitement of men who are preparing to sail into the unknown. These were not just sailors, they were the cartographers of reality. They were fueled by a spirit of discovery that mirrored the artists and scientists back home, a refusal to accept the boundaries of the past as the limits of the future. For centuries, the world was perceived as a relatively small known entity, with maps ending at the edges of familiar coastlines. But the Renaissance spirit demanded more. It demanded proof. These navigators, using newly refined instruments, the astrolabe, the quadrant, and more accurate maritime charts, began to challenge the ancient sailors' myths of monsters and bottomless voids. They were replacing superstition with mathematics. They were measuring the stars at night to chart their course across the immense shifting blue of the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans. It was a monumental act of courage, a physical manifestation of the humanist belief that man could master his environment through knowledge and grit. Think of the psychological impact this had on the people left behind. The news of new lands, new civilizations, and new flora and fauna travelling back via merchant ships shattered the narrow framework of the old world. It forced the European mind to grapple with a profound sense of scale. The world was no longer just the immediate surroundings of a city-state, it was a vast, interconnected, and diverse globe. This realization sparked a cascade of consequences. Trade routes were rewritten, the study of geography exploded, and a new fascination with the other, with cultures and customs never before encountered, began to permeate the art, literature, and philosophy of the time. Yet this was also a time of quiet reflection for those on the ships. Imagine the long, lonely nights at sea, where the sky is so vast it seems to touch the water on every side. The navigator standing on the deck, looking up at the constellations, must have felt both an overwhelming sense of insignificance and a powerful sense of purpose. They were the bridge between the old map and the new. Their journey was a physical metaphor for the human condition during the Renaissance, a constant movement toward the unknown, driven by the belief that there was more to be seen, more to be understood, and more to be gained by pushing past the edge of the map. As you rest tonight, let this sense of vastness soothe you. The boundaries of your own world, too, are always expanding. The challenges you face, the new things you learn, the people you meet, these are the landmarks of your own personal map. You are constantly charting new territories of your own character. There is no need to fear the horizon. It is merely an invitation to see what else is possible. Feel yourself floating on the vast, calm ocean of the night, guided by the steady light of your own inner compass. You are safe in the vastness, anchored in your own awareness, drifting toward whatever quiet, beautiful discovery the next day may bring. History often reserves its brightest ink for the names of kings, popes, and grand masters. Yet, if we look closely at the marble veins of the statues or the delicate weave of the tapestries, we find the work of thousands of silent contributors. These were the artisans, the stonemasons whose fingers bled to shape the soaring arches, the master smiths who forged the gates of the great palaces, and the weavers who spent a lifetime at the loom to capture the colours of a sunrise in silk. Their lives were not marked by the luxury of the villas they built, but by the rhythm of the hammer, the chisel, and the needle. They were the true architects of the Renaissance, providing the physical foundation for the genius of the age. Consider the dedication of a stonemason working on a cathedral that he knows he will never see finished. His life was a devotion to a single task, a slow, meticulous dialogue with the rock. He worked with a deep understanding of the grain, the structural integrity of the arch, and the way light would play against the surface once the sun hit the stone. There was no Renaissance without this labour. The grand visions of the architects were mere sketches until these hands turned them into reality. In their work there is a profound, quiet integrity, a belief that the act of creation is noble regardless of whether one's name is remembered by history. These artisans lived by a different kind of humanism. Theirs was the humanism of the material world. They understood that the physical environment is an extension of the soul. By creating things of beauty, durability, and order, they were, in their own way, participating in the divine order. They taught the world that the mundane is not inferior, but that the everyday can be imbued with grace through the simple, repetitive act of doing a job well. The Renaissance was not just a theoretical movement, it was a sensory one. It was the tactile experience of cool stone, the smell of sawdust, the weight of a well-balanced tool, and the quiet pride of a task completed with excellence. Think of the legacy of their invisible work. Every time we marvel at the proportions of an old building or the intricate details of an antique piece of furniture, we are witnessing the silent, enduring heartbeat of these artisans. They did not write the manifestos, but they lived the principles. They were the ones who turned the why of the Renaissance into the what of our world. Their lives remind us that we are all, in a sense, craftsmen of our own existence. Every action we take, every detail we attend to, and every project we pour our energy into, is a way of leaving our mark on the architecture of time. As you rest, let your thoughts settle on the value of your own labour, the daily tasks that make up your life. There is a quiet, sacred dignity in the repetition of your days. You too are a craftsman of your own peace. You are shaping the stone of your mind, smoothing out the rough edges of your stress, and building the architecture of your own restorative night. There is no need for your work to be witnessed or recorded by others to have value. Its value lies in the care, the patience, and the integrity you bring to it. Feel your hands and your mind grow heavy with the weight of this noble, quiet work. You're building a sanctuary for yourself, stone by stone, breath by breath, drifting into the deep, calm stillness where the master craftsman finally puts down his tools and finds rest. While history books often feature the faces of men in high collars and velvet doublets, the true vitality of the Renaissance was sustained by the quiet, incisive intellects of women who worked within the constraints of their era to shape its culture. Behind the great families and the influential courts stood women who were masters of diplomacy, language, and the arts. Imagine the inner chambers of a grand Italian palazzo where, away from the noise of the public square, women like Isabella d'Este or Lucrezia Tornabuoni curated the intellectual atmosphere of their homes. They were the ones who invited the poets, commissioned the portraits, and maintained the intricate correspondences that connected the power players of Europe. To be a woman of standing in the Renaissance was to navigate a complex, invisible world. They were denied the formal university education given to their brothers, yet many were profoundly learned, mastering Latin, Greek, music, and rhetoric in the private solitude of their studies. Their Renaissance happened in the quiet moments, in the reading of forbidden texts, and in the strategic guidance they provided to their families. They understood, perhaps better than anyone, that power was a fluid thing. A well-placed word in a letter, a carefully orchestrated social gathering, or the silent, steady management of a massive household was often the pivot upon which political and economic decisions turned. Consider the resilience required to thrive in such an environment. They were often viewed as decorative pieces in the grand architecture of noble lineages, yet they transformed their roles into positions of significant influence. They were the keepers of the lineage, the managers of the treasury, and the ultimate arbitrators of taste. When a great artist sought a commission, it was often the discerning eye of the female patron that determined the final vision. They shaped the Renaissance aesthetic, the elegance, the grace, and the humanistic focus as much as any philosopher or architect. Their legacy is not just in the records of history, but in the enduring idea that intelligence, when coupled with grace and strategy, can alter the trajectory of an entire age. This is a lesson in the power of the unseen influence. Much of the change we experience in our own lives happens in the quiet, unrecorded moments where we make choices, influence those around us, and hold the space for others to grow. The women of the Renaissance taught us that you do not need to stand in the center of the stage to direct the play. There is a deep, tranquil power in observation, in careful planning, and in the quiet stewardship of one's environment. It is the power to build, to sustain, and to refine the world from within the sanctuary of one's own sphere of influence. As you drift tonight, feel the softness of this quiet power. There is no need to exert force to make an impact. There is only the need to be present, to be thoughtful, and to act with intention. Like those Renaissance women, you are the custodian of your own sanctuary. You are managing the energies of your life, softening the edges of your worries, and creating a space of beauty and order within your own mind. The history we have walked through is a tapestry woven by all, a collective effort of spirit and intellect. Let the stories of these silent architects lull you into a state of profound ease. You are safe, you are capable, and you are surrounded by the wisdom of those who knew how to find freedom in the quietest of corners. In the silent corners of 15th century workshops, a mechanical miracle was occurring, one that would fracture the medieval monopoly on truth forever. Imagine the scene, the rhythmic heavy clanking of the printing press, the smell of linseed oil and lamp-black ink, and the delicate, precise arrangement of thousands of tiny lead letters. Before this moment, a book was a treasure, a manuscript laboured over by monks for months, tethered to library shelves by iron chains, but with the press, the word became mobile. It became a river flowing out of the scriptoriums and into the hands of the merchant, the artisan, and the student. This was the true democratization of the Renaissance. The printing press did more than just reproduce texts. It accelerated the pace of human thought. Ideas could now travel faster than a horseman, crossing borders and languages with ease. A pamphlet written in one city could ignite a debate in another within weeks. This was the birth of the public sphere, a space where opinions could be challenged, scientific discoveries could be standardized, and a common culture could be forged. The era of the lone scholar was giving way to the era of the connected mind. Consider the psychological shift this created. For the first time, individuals could hold the source of knowledge in their own hands. They didn't have to rely solely on the interpretation of a distant authority. They could read for themselves, reflect for themselves, and form their own conclusions. This fostered a new, robust sense of self-reliance. The printed word invited a quiet, personal engagement, a dialogue between the author's mind and the reader's soul. It changed the very architecture of how we think, shifting our focus from passive reception to active inquiry. This transition from the ear to the eye, from a culture of listening to a culture of reading, is the silent foundation of our modern world. It taught us to value the individual perspective and to see the written record as a bridge across time. Those early printed pages, with their sturdy paper and dense black ink, were the seeds of the modern age. They carried the history, the poetry, and the logic of the Renaissance into the homes of ordinary people, planting the idea that everyone has a role to play in the grand conversation of humanity. As you rest tonight, reflect on the incredible journey of a single idea, from the mind of a philosopher to the lead type of a press, to the parchment of a book, to the eyes of a reader. It is a chain of connection that spans centuries. Your own mind is the ultimate library. Every thought you have, every piece of wisdom you have absorbed, is a part of this endless, unfolding conversation. There is a deep, tranquil comfort in knowing that you are never truly alone in your thinking. You are joined to a vast community of voices from the past, all of whom sought, just like you, to make sense of the world, to find beauty, and to leave something of value behind. Let the weight of the day lift, replaced by the feeling of being part of this vast intellectual tapestry, drifting deeper into the peace of a mind that is both quiet and brilliantly, infinitely alive. For centuries, human life had been governed by the pulse of nature, the rising of the sun, the changing of the seasons, and the tolling of the monastic bell, which signalled the times for prayer. Time was fluid, expansive, and tethered to the divine. But during the Renaissance, the rhythm of life began to change. In the high towers of city squares, the first great mechanical clocks were installed, complex, synchronized labyrinths of brass gears, weights, and escapements. Suddenly, time was no longer just a feeling, it was a visible, measurable, and objective reality. This was a quiet, domestic revolution. The clock moved time from the heavens to the public square, and eventually into the very rooms of the citizens. It introduced the concept of the hour as a rigid, standardized unit. Life began to be structured by segments, by appointments, and by the relentless ticking of the second hand. It was the birth of efficiency. For the merchant, time was money. For the scientist, time was a variable to be measured. For the city, time was the pulse of order. This new mastery of time allowed for the synchronization of human activity on a scale never before imagined. Yet this shift also brought a new kind of tension. Man was now creating his own tempo, distinct from the slow, organic unfolding of the seasons. Think of the psychological impact of hearing that first mechanical clock chime, the reminder that life is finite, and that every second is a fleeting, non-renewable resource. It created a profound sense of urgency, yet it also fostered a new level of precision. The Renaissance mind became obsessed with the moment. Artists wanted to capture the exact gesture of a figure. Astronomers wanted to pinpoint the exact trajectory of a planet. Diplomats wanted to time their moves with exquisite accuracy. This mechanical precision became the heartbeat of the modern world. It is the invisible scaffolding upon which our entire contemporary lives are built. Our schedules, our global travel, our digital communication. But even amidst this relentless ticking, the people of the Renaissance understood the need for counter-rhythm. They built these grand, beautiful clock towers, not just to track time, but to celebrate it as a piece of art. The clock was a wonder, a testament to human ingenuity. They sought to bring beauty to the very structure of time itself, creating chimes that echoed through the streets like music, reminding the citizens that while life is measured, it is also meant to be lived with grace. As you sit in this quiet, listen for the rhythm within you, the steady, calm beat of your own heart. It is the oldest clock in existence, one that does not measure in mechanical units, but in the slow natural cycles of your breath and the depth of your rest. You are stepping out of the clock time of your day and into the deep, timeless space of your own consciousness. There is no urgency here. The gears of the world can keep spinning, the second hand can keep moving, but for now you have excused yourself from the mechanical dance. You are returning to the original rhythm, the one that existed long before the first brass gear was ever cast. Feel the stillness expand, slow and wide, as you release the need to measure or control. You are drifting into a place where time does not pass, it simply is. As the Renaissance matured, a new, curious impulse took hold of the influential and the wealthy, the desire to gather the world into a single room. This was the dawn of the studiolo, the private study or cabinet of curiosities, where a scholar or a prince would assemble not just paintings, but ancient coins, strange minerals, botanical specimens, and delicate instruments of navigation. Imagine walking into such a space. It was not a chaotic warehouse, but a microcosm of the universe. To own these objects was not merely a display of status, it was an act of guardianship. By collecting these items, these individuals were effectively saying, this beauty, this knowledge, this history must not be lost to time. This shift from simple ownership to thoughtful curation is the precursor to the modern museum. The Renaissance taught us that when you place a beautiful object in a space of quiet contemplation, you change the way the mind perceives it. It is no longer just a commodity or a tool, it becomes a catalyst for wonder. Think of the Medici collection in Florence, thousands of items, gathered with an eye for both aesthetic perfection and intellectual depth. They were creating a memory palace, a physical space that could sustain the human spirit long after the collectors themselves had passed away. Consider the profound responsibility this placed on the individual. If you have the power to save a piece of history, a work of art, or a fragment of knowledge, you become a bridge to the future. This is why we have libraries, archives, and galleries today. They are our modern studioli. They are the places where we go to remind ourselves of who we have been and what we are capable of creating. The Renaissance belief was that by surrounding oneself with the best of human achievement, one could literally reshape their own character. The environment you build for yourself, the books on your shelves, the art on your walls, the atmosphere of your home, has the power to shape your own internal landscape. This impulse to preserve is fundamentally an act of hope. It is the belief that there is a future worth handing these things down to, even in the midst of political turmoil, economic change, and the constant flux of the era. These collectors were planting seeds for generations they would never meet. They understood that culture is a collective inheritance, one that must be tended, protected, and shared. When we visit a museum today, we are walking through the echoes of that Renaissance impulse, the desire to make the fleeting permanent, the desire to make the personal universal. As you rest in this quiet, think about the collection of your own life. You have gathered experiences, memories, lessons and dreams, each one a precious artifact of your own journey. Some are bright and polished like a Renaissance sculpture, others are complex and weathered like an ancient manuscript. In the sanctuary of your mind, you are the curator. You have the power to choose what to hold on to, what to place in the light of your awareness, and what to allow to fade into the shadows of the past. There is a profound sense of safety in this. You are not losing yourself, you are organizing your own wisdom. You are creating a quiet, beautifully curated space where you can retreat whenever the world outside becomes too loud. Drift into this space now. Let the walls of your mind be calm and steady, holding the precious artifacts of your own history, and know that here, in this internal gallery, you are perfectly at peace. To understand the soul of the Renaissance, one must look at how it handled the darkness. We often focus on the bright golden light that seems to emanate from their frescoes, but the true brilliance of their art, the secret that gave their figures depth and humanity, was the mastery of shadow. This was the technique known as chiaroscuro, a word that literally means light dark. It was the realization that light cannot be defined without its opposite. By pushing the shadows into the corners of the canvas, the artists of the era were able to pull their subjects forward, giving them a three-dimensional living presence that had never been seen before. Think of the psychological bravery this required. To paint a figure with such deep, impenetrable shadow was to acknowledge that life is not all clarity and sunshine. It was an admission that reality is composed of both what we reveal and what we conceal. The masters Caravaggio, Leonardo, and later the masters of the North used this contrast to draw the viewer into the scene. They were telling us that truth is often found in the threshold, the very space where the light begins to fail and the darkness takes hold. It is in the tension between these two forces that the most profound human emotions are expressed: sorrow, ecstasy, longing, and peace. Consider how this applies to our own internal landscapes. We are often taught to fear our own shadows, the moments of uncertainty, the hidden anxieties, the quiet doubts that linger at the edges of our thoughts. But the Renaissance perspective suggests a different approach, that these shadows are not signs of weakness, but the very things that give our joy its shape and our resilience its depth. Without the dark, the light would have no contrast. It would be a flat, uninteresting glare. By embracing the chiaroscuro of your own experience, you allow yourself to be a whole, complex and beautiful work of art. The great painters knew that they didn't need to eliminate the shadow to make the subject shine. They simply needed to place the light strategically. They taught us that even in the deepest gloom, a single sliver of light, a reflection on a tear, the glow on a hand, the softness of a face, is enough to define the entire composition. This is a lesson in perspective. In the hardest moments of your own life, you need only look for that one point of light, a memory, a breath, a moment of gratitude, and hold it steady against the darkness. It is enough. It is the beginning of your own personal composition. As you drift into the final stretches of this night, let the technique of chiaroscuro soothe your mind. Imagine your day as a painting. The trials, the responsibilities, the noise, let them recede into the soft velvet shadows. They are not gone. They simply provide the contrast that allows the current moment of peace to stand out with such clarity. Feel the light of your own awareness resting gently on the surface of your existence, just like the subtle illumination on a masterpiece. You are becoming a work of art, composed, balanced, and serene. Let the darkness be a comfort, a quiet frame that holds you safely in the stillness. You are drifting into a place where all contrasts resolve into a single beautiful and effortless state of being. As the vibrant golden light of the Renaissance began to soften, it did not fade away. Rather, it transformed, flowing into a new, clear-eyed morning, the age of reason. The curiosity that had once fueled the brush of the painter and the hand of the sculptor began to refine itself into the rigorous logic of the scientist. We must understand that this was not a rupture, but a natural evolution. The same spirit that drove Da Vinci to dissect the human body to understand its mechanics eventually compelled his successors to dissect the laws of the universe itself. The Renaissance man who sought to know everything began to specialize, building the meticulous interlocking systems of knowledge that define our modern world. Imagine the atmosphere in the salons of the late 17th century. The air was no longer thick with the incense of the cathedral or the mystery of the alchemist's lab. It was filled with the sharp, clean scent of paper, ink, and the excitement of mathematical discovery. The focus shifted from the divine proportion found in nature to the universal laws governed by physics and gravity. It was a transition from seeing the world as a beautiful, mysterious tapestry to seeing it as a grand, rational machine. This was the moment humanity began to trust in its own capacity for calculation, for evidence, and for systemic progress. Consider what this meant for the individual. The Renaissance had empowered the human spirit, but the Age of Reason empowered the human mind to construct a framework for that spirit to thrive. It brought an end to the era of unquestioned dogma, replacing it with the demand for proof. This shift is the reason we can today sit in the comfort of our homes, shielded by the advancements of medicine, technology, and engineering. We are the inheritors of this transition, the beneficiaries of a long, arduous process where humanity learned to marry its creative imagination with its analytical power. Yet even as we moved toward this clearer, more calculated view of existence, the core of the Renaissance remained intact, the belief that the individual is the measure of all things. The thinkers of the Enlightenment, just like the humanists before them, held on to the radical idea that we are not subjects of fate, but masters of our own destiny. They took the art of the past and used it as a foundation for the architecture of the future. The beauty of a statue or the harmony of a poem became the metaphor for a society built on justice, balance, and human rights. As you rest tonight, contemplate the immense continuity of this human journey. You are the product of both the dreamer and the scientist. Within you, there is the Renaissance soul that yearns for beauty, meaning, and connection, and there is the modern mind that seeks clarity, order, and understanding. You do not need to choose between them. You are the synthesis of these centuries of progress. You can exist in the light of reason, enjoying the peace of a calm, well-ordered mind, while still keeping the flame of your wonder alive in the shadows. Feel the weight of these centuries supporting you, not as a burden, but as a vast, secure foundation. You are at the edge of your own era, looking out into a future that is as bright and full of potential as the day the first perspective sketch was drawn. Drift into this peace, knowing that the history we have travelled through is not behind you. It is within you, a quiet, enduring strength that allows you to rest, to dream, and to prepare for the light of a new day. As we approach the final movements of our historical symphony, we must pause to consider one of the most powerful yet often misunderstood tools humanity refined during this journey, the art of the healthy doubt. In the medieval mind, to question was often seen as a transgression, a drift toward chaos, but the Renaissance and the era of logic that followed it dared to flip this paradigm. They realized that progress is impossible without the courage to ask why and how do we know this to be true. It was the birth of intellectual independence. Think of the scholars and scientists who risked their reputations and sometimes their lives to challenge the established view of the cosmos. When Copernicus looked at the stars and suggested that the Earth was not the center of the universe, he wasn't just presenting a new astronomical theory, he was asserting the right of the human mind to observe reality independently of tradition. This was not a move toward godlessness, but a move toward honesty. It was the belief that the universe was so complex and so beautiful that it deserved to be understood for what it truly is, rather than what we were told it should be. This spirit of inquiry is the ultimate inheritance of our age. It is what allows us to look at the world today with all its complexities and information and discern for ourselves what is meaningful and what is mere noise. A healthy doubt is not a cold, cynical rejection of everything. Rather, it is a warm, discerning filter. It is the ability to weigh evidence, to hold multiple perspectives, and to remain open to the possibility that our current understanding might be incomplete. It is a sign of a mind that is alive, engaged, and unafraid of the unknown. By embracing this legacy, we find a profound sense of freedom. When you are no longer bound by the requirement to accept everything at face value, you reclaim the power of your own judgment. You begin to understand that you are the author of your own convictions. This is the hallmark of the modern individual, someone who can navigate the complexities of life with a steady hand, not because they have all the answers, but because they have the courage to keep asking the right questions. It is a way of living that is both humble and empowered, recognizing our limitations while celebrating our capacity for discovery. As you settle into the quiet of this moment, let go of the need to have every answer. You do not need to resolve every conflict or decide every truth tonight. You have been granted the freedom to simply observe, to feel, and to wonder. The world is vast, complex, and full of mysteries, and that is exactly as it should be. There is a deep, tranquil safety in this acceptance. You are not required to hold up the sky with your certainty. You are only required to be present with your own curiosity. Feel your mind opening, expanding into the stillness, releasing the tension of needing to be right. There is only the breath, the awareness, and the beautiful, endless journey of learning. Drift deeper now into the safe harbor of your own understanding, where you can rest, knowing that your mind is free, your journey is your own, and the quiet night is your most patient teacher. If we look closely at the annals of history, we see that it is not merely a record of wars, plagues, or the fall of empires. It is, above all, a story of an irrepressible instinct to create. Even in the aftermath of the most devastating calamities, when the smoke of the battlefield cleared or the silence of the aftermath descended, the first thing people did was to rebuild, to decorate, to sing, and to paint. The Renaissance itself was born from the ashes of a fractured world, rising as a collective healing, a declaration that beauty is not a luxury, but a fundamental necessity for the human spirit to survive. Think of the frescoes painted on the walls of churches that had survived fires and sieges. Think of the poems written in the dark of plague years. These were not just artistic endeavours, they were acts of resistance against the chaos of existence. By creating something orderly, something harmonious, something lasting, people were reclaiming their agency over a world that felt increasingly indifferent to their suffering. They were saying, "I'm here, I am capable of seeing beauty, I am capable of bringing something new into this world." This is the enduring secret of our species, our capacity to transmute pain into perception and suffering into form. Consider how this truth resonates in your own life. When the world feels turbulent, when the pace of life feels overwhelming, or when you face your own personal losses, where do you turn? You turn to the things that anchor you. A piece of music, a quiet walk in nature, a book that speaks to your soul, or the simple, meticulous act of organizing your own space. You are following the same ancient rhythm of the masters of old. You are using the creation of beauty or the appreciation of it as a sanctuary. You are, in your own way, ensuring that the light of the human spirit continues to burn even when the shadows feel long. This is the great quiet lesson of history. Everything passes, but the impulse to create, to find meaning, and to appreciate the profound order of existence remains. The marble of a statue may erode, the parchment of a manuscript may yellow, but the idea, the spark of genius, the moment of awe, the feeling of connection to something larger than oneself is immortal. It is a legacy that you carry within you every single day. You are part of an unbroken chain of survivors who decided that, despite everything, the world is worth observing with wonder. As you drift now, let this thought wrap around you like a warm, protective mantle. You do not need to carry the weight of the world's history on your shoulders. You only need to be the guardian of your own inner gallery. Allow the beauty of what you have learned, the grace of the Renaissance painters, the tenacity of the humanists, the vast clear light of the thinkers to settle into your mind as if they were works of art on the walls of your own quiet sanctuary. There is nothing to fear. The storms of history have all passed, and the peace of the present is yours to inhabit. Let your breathing slow to the rhythm of this ancient, enduring pulse. You are safe. You are part of the vast, unfolding tapestry of life, and for this moment you are simply allowed to be still, to be whole, and to let go. We have walked through the great galleries of the past, traced the outlines of centuries-old inventions, and felt the heartbeat of an era that dared to redefine what it meant to be human. Yet, as we stand at this vantage point, looking back at the long road we have travelled together, we realise that we have not reached a destination, we have simply arrived at a new threshold. The Renaissance was never a closed chapter. It was a fire that was lit, a flame passed from hand to hand, a spirit of inquiry that continues to burn in the quiet moments of our own lives. Think of history, not as a map of what has already happened, but as a compass for what is yet to come. The curiosity that moved the great minds of the 15th century is the same curiosity that stirs within you when you look at the stars, when you solve a problem, or when you find beauty in the unexpected. The world is still vast, still mysterious, and still waiting to be decoded. Every day brings its own new terrain, new perspectives to gain, new challenges to master, and new stories to weave into the grand tapestry of human experience. We are not merely the observers of history, we are its architects. The choices you make tomorrow, the questions you ask, the way you choose to hold your own light and dark, these are the brushstrokes that define the next age. We carry the Renaissance within us, not as a memory, but as a living, breathing capability. We have the same capacity to reinvent, to build, to connect, and to find grace in the midst of change. The journey does not end here. It simply transforms, shifting from the exploration of the past into the active, conscious creation of the future. So let this silence not be a sign of completion, but a moment of preparation as you drift. Feel the infinite potential that lies ahead, the vast uncharted territories of your own mind and the world you influence. There is a quiet excitement in knowing that the Renaissance is always available to you, waiting to be rekindled whenever you choose to look at the world with fresh eyes. You are the custodian of this eternal spirit of discovery. Tonight, let yourself rest in the peaceful certainty that you are ready for whatever comes next. There is no rush to cross the next horizon. For now, simply feel the steady pulse of your own life, the quiet rhythm of your own breath, and the calm clarity of a mind that knows it is part of something much larger than itself. You are drifting into a deep, restorative sleep, not to leave the journey behind, but to gather the strength to continue it. The stars that watched over the builders of Florence are the same stars that watch over you tonight. They are still shining, still guiding, and still inviting you to dream of what is possible. Sleep now, knowing that when you wake, the world will be waiting, fresh, vast, and open to your touch. As the golden glow of the Renaissance began to blend into the crisp, morning light of the Enlightenment, a fundamental shift occurred in the way humanity engaged with the world. The artistic passion that once sought to mirror the beauty of the Creator through painting and sculpture began to refine itself into a disciplined, systematic quest for the mechanics of existence. It was a move from the why, the philosophical search for meaning, to the how, the empirical search for cause and effect. Imagine a shift from the warmth of a candlelit library to the cool, precise clarity of a laboratory. This was the birth of the scientific spirit in its modern sense. Thinkers like Francis Bacon, René Descartes, and later Isaac Newton began to argue that the universe was not a chaotic tapestry of mysterious forces, but a magnificent clockwork machine governed by universal laws. They believed that if one could observe, measure, and calculate, one could unlock the secrets of nature itself. This was a radical form of empowerment. It suggested that the world was not something to be feared or interpreted solely through dogma, but something to be understood and mastered through human intelligence. Consider the atmosphere of this new age. It was a time of intense intellectual excitement, where salons in Paris and coffee houses in London became the new cathedrals of thought. Men and women gathered to discuss, to challenge, and to prove. They were no longer satisfied with the inherited wisdom of the ancients. They wanted their own evidence. This period demanded a new kind of renaissance, one that was not defined by aesthetic grace alone, but by rigorous logic, skepticism, and the refusal to accept anything without clear demonstration. It was an age that insisted on the transparency of truth. Yet even in this pursuit of cold logic, the human heart remained. These thinkers were still driven by the same wonder that inspired Michelangelo or Leonardo. They simply found their art in the symmetry of a mathematical equation or the elegance of a law of motion. They saw beauty and order and truth in the predictability of the natural world. They were, in essence, the descendants of the humanists, carrying the torch of curiosity into a deeper, more demanding territory. As you sit in this stillness, think of your own mind as a bridge between these two great eras. You have the appreciation for beauty and the capacity for wonder, the gifts of the Renaissance, and you have the ability to think logically, to analyze and to seek clarity, the tools of the Enlightenment. This is the dual heritage of your consciousness. When you look at the world, you can appreciate the art in its chaos, while also seeking the logic in its structure. Feel this balance within you. It is a stable, centered way of existing. You do not need to be overwhelmed by the complexity of the world, for you have the tools to understand it and the soul to appreciate it. Let your thoughts settle into this equilibrium, feeling both the passion of the artist and the calm, steady precision of the scientist. You are the synthesis of these centuries of inquiry, drifting peacefully into the realization that you are perfectly equipped to navigate the world as it is. As the age of reason matured, a quiet but revolutionary transformation took place within the human spirit, the birth of the modern individual. For centuries, a person's identity was almost entirely dictated by their birth, their family name, their trade, their village, and their role within the rigid hierarchies of church and state. You were defined by your station, not by your inner landscape. But as the Enlightenment spread, a new, daring idea began to take root in the minds of thinkers and artists alike. The belief that the self is a project. Each individual was, for the first time, invited to be the author of their own life story. Imagine the freedom and the weight of this realization. It meant that one's destiny was not necessarily fixed by the stars or by lineage, but by the cultivation of one's own mind, character, and choices. This was the era where autobiography flourished, where portraiture began to capture the interiority of the subject rather than just their status, and where philosophy turned its gaze toward the I. Thinkers like John Locke argued for the tabula rasa, the blank slate, suggesting that we are not born as predetermined cogs in a machine, but as beings shaped by our own unique experiences, reflections, and education. This transition created a new kind of social fabric. If every individual was seen as a holder of their own unique reason and potential, the very basis of society had to be re-evaluated. It gave rise to the radical notion of human rights, self-governance, and the importance of personal liberty. It was no longer enough to serve one's master. One was now expected to serve the development of one's own humanity. It sparked a new form of courage, the courage to be different, to think differently, and to stand apart from the crowd when one's conscience demanded it. Consider the beauty of this transition for your own life. You are the beneficiary of this long evolution toward autonomy. Every choice you make to align your actions with your values, every moment you spend in honest self-reflection is a continuation of this shift. You are not just a product of your environment. You are a conscious participant in your own evolution. The I that you are today is a complex, rich, and ever-changing landscape, layered with the echoes of history, but uniquely yours to cultivate and nurture. As you rest tonight, let this sense of individuality settle deep into your bones. There is no need to compare yourself to the roles others play or the expectations the world might place upon you. Yourself is a sanctuary that belongs only to you. It is a space where your experiences, your lessons, your joys, and your quiet doubts all converge into one unique composition. Feel the peace of being exactly who you are without the need for external validation. You are a sovereign entity, a masterpiece of your own creation, drifting through the night with a steady, quiet awareness of your own worth. You are not a fragment of a larger machine. You are a complete, whole, and deeply significant individual, resting in the expansive, calm confidence of your own being. As the world became increasingly defined by the clacking gears of industry and the rigid categories of logic, a countercurrent began to swell in the human heart. It was the birth of Romanticism, a movement that dared to whisper that the map of the human experience was far larger than what could be measured with a ruler or a clock. The Romantics looked at the cold clinical clarity of the age of reason and asked, but what of the wild, untamed beauty of the mountains? What of the melancholy of a sunset? What of the depth of a dream? They rediscovered that logic is a tool for survival, but emotion is the fuel for living. Imagine the artists and poets of this era walking through the fog-drenched moors or standing before a storm-tossed sea, finding in these landscapes a reflection of their own internal tempests. They moved away from the symmetry of classical architecture and toward the sublime, that feeling of being small yet deeply connected to the infinite power of nature. They championed the idea that passion, intuition, and the subjective I were not flaws to be corrected, but windows through which we could glimpse the divine. It was a liberation of the spirit, a permission to feel deeply, to yearn intensely, and to find truth in the beauty of the temporary and the fleeting. This shift was a necessary correction to the human story. It taught us that our dreams are not just idle distractions, they are the blueprints of our deepest values. The Romantic era validated the individual's inner life as a sacred space. It honoured the wanderer, the dreamer, and the artist. It recognized that while science can explain how a flower blooms, it is the heart that explains why that beauty matters to the soul. This was the moment humanity began to value the poetry of existence alongside its prose. Consider the role this plays in your own life. In a world that often demands efficiency, speed, and logical outcomes, you have the right and the need to embrace your own romantic side. You need the moments of stillness where you let your imagination wander. You need the appreciation of the sublime, whether it is in a piece of music, a quiet walk, or a flicker of inspiration. You are not a machine designed to function. You are a living, feeling, evolving, being designed to experience. As you drift into the quiet of the night, allow yourself the freedom of the romantic spirit. Let go of the need to analyze, to categorize, or to justify your thoughts. Instead, let your mind float on the currents of your own emotions. Feel the depth of your own capacity for wonder. The darkness is not a void, it is a canvas for your imagination. The quiet is not an absence of logic, it is the presence of your own soul's music. You are drifting into a dreamscape where the rigid boundaries of the day dissolve, leaving only the vast, beautiful, and deeply personal landscape of your own inner world. You are safe here, floating on the edge of the sublime, anchored by the steady, gentle rhythm of your own heart. We have traced the long, winding path from the silent stone of the cathedrals to the ticking gears of the clocks, from the printed page to the spark of scientific discovery, and from the cold light of logic to the warmth of romantic emotion. Now we find ourselves in an age of unprecedented convergence, a time where the barriers of distance, time and space have essentially dissolved. We live in a world where the vast library of human thought, the art of the masters, and the latest discoveries of science are all accessible with a single gentle touch. It is the fulfillment of an ancient dream, the democratization of wisdom. Think of the sheer magnitude of this connectivity. We are surrounded by a digital atmosphere, a web of information that links our personal stories to the collective narrative of the species. When we look at a screen, we are not just looking at a tool, we are looking at a mirror reflecting the sum total of human inquiry. Every question you have ever asked, every wonder that has stirred your heart, finds its echo in the digital space. This is the ultimate manifestation of the public sphere the printers of the 15th century could only have imagined. We are connected, continuously and instantly, to the heartbeat of the globe. Yet there is a quiet challenge in this hyperconnectivity. In a world where everything is available, the most valuable skill is no longer the ability to find information, but the ability to cultivate stillness amidst the noise. We have built a world that never sleeps, a world that demands our constant attention, but the history we have walked through reminds us that our deepest insights, our most brilliant ideas, and our most restorative peace do not come from the rush of the feed, but from the silence of the studiolo. We must learn to be the curators of our own digital lives, choosing what to let in and what to leave at the threshold of our sanctuary. Consider that even in this era of the global brain, the individual remains the final filter. You are the one who decides what to hold as true, what to treasure as beautiful, and what to release as distraction. This digital age does not replace your humanity. It amplifies your responsibility to protect the sanctity of your own focus. You have inherited the tools of a god, but you still possess the heart of a human, one that needs the slow, rhythmic pulse of rest, the deep, unhurried breath of meditation, and the quiet, sacred space of the interior self. As you drift now, imagine the vast, invisible network of knowledge all around you settling into a soft, gentle hum. It is a background sound, a distant echo of the world's activity, and it has no power over you here. You have disconnected from the flow of data to reconnect with the flow of your own being. Let the light of the digital world fade into the warm, golden glow of your own awareness. You are not a node in a network. You are a person, resting in the safety of your own consciousness. The world can keep spinning, the information can keep flowing, but you have found the center, the place where all histories meet and then fall away. Drift deeper into the stillness where there is no need to know, no need to connect, and no need to do, only the beautiful, effortless, and infinite capacity to simply be. We stand today at a singular horizon. For the first time in the history we have travelled together, we are no longer merely observers of nature or pupils of our ancestors. We have become the architects of our own evolution. We are the generation that holds the tools to rewrite the very codes of life, to build intelligence that mimics our own, and to construct virtual worlds as vivid as the one we breathe in. The curiosity that once led an artist to mix pigments in a quiet studio now leads a scientist to explore the fundamental building blocks of existence. It is the ultimate manifestation of the Renaissance spirit, the realization that the world is not a fixed, immutable thing, but a malleable canvas waiting for our vision. Think of what this means for the concept of possibility. In the age of the printing press, a book was a miracle. Today, the ability to transmit human consciousness across the globe is the norm. We have reached a point where the only limit to our progress is the reach of our imagination. This is a profound moment in our species' journey. We are transitioning from a time of discovering what is out there to designing what could be. We are taking the wisdom of the philosophers, the precision of the scientists, and the passion of the artists and merging them into a new kind of power, the power of deliberate creation. Yet this power brings with it a unique weight. As we step into this future, the question is no longer what can we do, but what should we do? It is a question that requires the wisdom of the past more than ever. It demands that we hold on to the humanist values we have learned: empathy, beauty, a respect for the natural order, and the understanding that progress without purpose is merely motion. We are building the future, but we must ensure that it is a future that honors the deep, quiet rhythm of the human heart. We are not just building machines, we are building our own legacy. Consider the role of your own consciousness in this grand unfolding. You are not a passenger in this future. You are an architect. Every intention you set, every value you uphold, and every moment of clarity you achieve contributes to the collective direction of humanity. When you choose to think deeply, to act with kindness, and to seek beauty, you are aligning yourself with the best of our history and pointing the way forward. You are the bridge between the brilliance of the past and the infinite potential of the days to come. As you drift tonight, release the need to map out this future. There is no blueprint you need to draw. There is no calculation you need to finish. You have already contributed to the future simply by existing, by learning, and by resting. Allow the future to arrive at its own pace. Trust in the resilience of the human spirit that has survived, adapted, and flourished through every era we have explored. Feel the immense, quiet strength of this continuity. You are a part of a species that knows how to create, how to dream, and how to transcend. Let this knowledge be the anchor that holds you steady as you drift into the deep, calm waters of sleep. You are safe, You are capable, and you are part of a story that is only just beginning. Let go of the controls, let go of the questions, and sink into the quiet, perfect stillness of the now. Having travelled from the stone floors of the past to the digital horizons of our own era, we finally reach the edge of our perspective, the stars, for millennia. Humanity has looked upward, using the night sky as a canvas for our myths, a clock for our agriculture, and a guide for our sailors. Today we look at the same stars not just with wonder, but with the knowledge of physics, the precision of telescopes, and the ambition of spaceflight. We know that we are part of a vast expanding cosmos, a tiny, fragile and beautiful speck in an ocean of light and dark. Think of the perspective this shift provides. When the Renaissance humanists placed the individual at the centre of the world, they were setting the stage for us to eventually realize that we are part of something much, much larger. This is the ultimate lesson of history. The more we know, the more we understand our own limitations. We are a part of the universe, not its masters. And yet there is a sublime comfort in this realization. By acknowledging our smallness, we are freed from the heavy, unnecessary burden of having to solve or control everything. We are invited instead to witness, to participate, and to marvel. Consider the silence of the cosmos. It is the original silence, the one that existed before the first gear turned, before the first word was written, and before the first dream was dreamt. It is a silence that is not cold, but deeply, profoundly inviting. It is the background of all existence. When you look at the stars tonight, you are seeing the light of the past travelling across the void to reach your eyes. You are a bridge connecting the ancient brilliance of the universe to the present moment of your own consciousness. This is where the true peace of the human experience resides, in the balance between our intense, burning curiosity and our humble, quiet acceptance of the unknown. We are explorers who are content to drift. We are thinkers who are happy to simply be. We are children of the stars, resting after a long, glorious journey. The history we have walked, the progress we have made, the lives we have lived, all of it has led to this moment of absolute celestial calm. As you settle into your rest, let the vastness of the universe become your sanctuary. You do not need to understand the mechanics of the galaxies or the depth of the void. You only need to feel the quiet breath of the universe within you. The stars are fixed in their ancient, steady dance, and you are tucked safely into the heart of that rhythm. Let your thoughts expand, drifting further and further until you are weightless, suspended in the velvet dark, cradled by the history of time and the vastness of space. There is nothing to achieve here. There is only the beauty of the light, the peace of the dark, and the stillness of a mind that has travelled the long road home. Sleep now in the endless, quiet arms of the cosmos. We have traversed the great timelines of history, but there is one realm that remains entirely your own, a realm that no historian can archive and no scientist can fully map, the world of your dreams. Every night when you close your eyes and the world of logic, data, and linear time fades away, you enter a space that is older than the Renaissance and deeper than the void of the cosmos. This is the interior architecture of the soul. Just as the masters of old built cathedrals to touch the divine, you build palaces of memory and imagination every night, constructing a reality that exists only for you. Think of dreams not as mere accidents of the mind, but as the studiolo of the spirit. It is the place where the day's experiences are curated, where the shadows of the chiaroscuro are softened, and where the questions that were too complex for the waking mind find their resolution. In this state, you are the ultimate artist. You do not need to follow the laws of physics or the demands of society. You are free to wander the corridors of your own subconscious, retrieving wisdom you didn't know you possessed, and soothing wounds you didn't know were still open. Consider the profound grace of this nightly pilgrimage. You are given a blank slate every single time you drift off. It is a daily rebirth. The burdens of the world, the history, the noise, the responsibilities are laid down at the door, and you enter the inner sanctuary of your true self. Here the I is not a name or a role. It is a consciousness, a witness, an observer of the infinite. You are learning to trust your own inner direction, knowing that your subconscious knows exactly what it needs to heal, to process, and to create. This is the final, most intimate secret of our journey, that the greatest exploration is not outward into the universe, but inward into the depths of the dreaming self. We have learned to look at the stars, but we are also learning to look into the mirror of the mind. By respecting your own need for sleep and for dreams, you are honoring the oldest human tradition of all, the need to retreat, to reflect, and to renew. You are not just closing your eyes. You are opening the doors to a library of your own making, where every dream is a manuscript waiting to be understood, and every moment of rest is a brushstroke of peace. As you drift now, surrender to the gentle rhythmic pull of the interior. Let the I that has travelled through history soften into the I that simply is. There is no need to guard the gate. The dreams are safe. They are your own, and they are beautiful in their complexity and their quiet logic. Feel your body becoming one with the stillness, your thoughts becoming as light as the smoke from an old apothecary's vial, and your soul settling into the comfort of its own home. You are the architect of your own rest, the guardian of your own quiet, and the master of your own peace. Sink down, deeper and deeper, into the warm velvet darkness where time does not exist, where history is merely a memory, and where you are perfectly, beautifully, and eternally at rest. History is often written as an account of accumulation, the expansion of empires, the growth of libraries, and the layering of intricate social hierarchies. Yet, beneath the clamour of expansion, a quieter, more profound movement has always existed, the search for the essential. We see this in the late Renaissance, where the masters began to move away from the ornate, crowded canvases of their youth toward a style that favoured composition and clarity. They learned that by removing the excess, they did not diminish the work, they allowed the truth of the subject to emerge. Consider the Stoic philosophers of antiquity, or the masters of the late 16th century, who realized that true power did not lie in the complexity of one's possessions, but in the discipline of one's mind. They discovered that when an empire grows too large, it becomes fragile. When a painting is too crowded, the viewer's eye is lost. This is the paradox of human achievement. The most enduring legacies are often those that have been distilled down to their purest form. Minimalism in this historical context was never an aesthetic choice. It was a survival strategy for the soul. It was the art of making space for what truly matters by ruthlessly shedding what does not. In the salons of the past, this was a mark of the highest refinement. To speak with economy, to design with intent, and to live with restraint was a way of honouring the dignity of the human experience. Those who mastered this understood that silence is not an empty absence, but a field of possibility, a space where the mind can finally settle, where reflections can form, and where the noise of the world is replaced by the resonance of one's own character. It was a rejection of the superficial in favour of the foundational. Today we live in an era that worships the more. We are bombarded by information, by choices, and by the constant pressure to add to our existence. Yet the history we have walked through suggests that our deepest insights do not come from the accumulation of these things, but from the quiet courage to simplify. If you were to peel away the layers of expectation, the digital noise, and the habits that no longer serve your core purpose, what would remain? That remaining essence is not a void, it is a fortress. As you sit in this stillness, let this philosophy of essence take hold. You do not need to carry the weight of everything you have learned or everything the world expects of you. You are allowed to set it down. Feel the relief of this simplification. Your breath, your awareness, and your capacity to observe, these are the only tools you truly need. You are standing in the quiet centre of your own life, in a space that has been cleared of all debris. There is a profound, unshakable strength in this minimalism. You are not losing anything. You are finally finding the space to simply exist, unburdened, focused, and perfectly aligned with the steady, rhythmic pulse of your own being. Throughout our history, every leap in technology has been met with a mix of awe and existential dread. When the mechanical clock first began to measure time with relentless precision, people feared it would turn the fluidity of life into a rigid sequence of tasks. When the steam engine revolutionized labor, many worried that the human touch would be rendered obsolete. Today, we stand before the rise of artificial intelligence and advanced computation, the latest mirror we have built to stare into. But history tells us that whenever we create a new machine, we are ultimately not building a replacement for ourselves, but a catalyst that forces us to redefine what is uniquely human. Think of the craftsmen of the 16th century. They were masters of tools, but their work was never defined by the chisel or the loom. It was defined by the intent, the perspective, and the raw emotion behind the action. Even in the height of the Industrial Revolution, when factories hummed with the sound of automated production, the value of a product remained tied to the human choice, the artistic struggle, and the story it told. We have always had a ghost in the machine, the consciousness of the creator that breathes meaning into inanimate matter. The danger of our current era is not that machines will become human, but that we might begin to treat ourselves like machines, prioritizing efficiency over empathy, data over intuition, and outcome over the process. History serves as our corrective lens. We look back at the thinkers who navigated the shift from the divine mandate of the Middle Ages to the logic of the Enlightenment, and we see how they successfully integrated new knowledge without losing their sense of wonder. They knew that the more complex our tools become, the more critical our capacity for stillness, critical thought, and compassion becomes. Consider the resilience of your own humanism. In a digital world of algorithms, you are the one who provides the context. You are the one who chooses to find beauty in a sunset, kindness in a stranger, or meaning in a tragedy. These are not outputs that can be computed. They are experiences that must be felt. Your ability to question, to dream, and to act with moral courage is a legacy that spans centuries, from the workshops of Florence to the laboratories of today. As you exist in this present moment, realize that you are the bridge between the silicon architecture we have built and the biological wonder we have inherited. There is no conflict here, only a dance. Let the technology handle the noise, the calculations, and the speed, while you hold the space for the things that truly matter. Presence, love, reflection, and quiet awareness. You are not being left behind by progress. You are the one steering it toward a more thoughtful future. Let the hum of the modern world fade into the background, like the distant sound of a city at night. You are anchored in the timeless human experience. Everything you need to be whole is already within you, perfectly preserved, perfectly evolving, and ready to meet the new day with a clarity that no machine could ever replicate. History is not a straight line leading toward a distant final point. It is a spiral, constantly returning to the same fundamental questions, yet from a higher vantage point each time. We have seen how the Renaissance rediscovered the wisdom of Greece and Rome, breathing new life into ancient texts to solve the problems of their own time. This is the reincarnation of ideas, a perpetual cycle where the intellectual labor of those who came before us never truly dies, but remains dormant, waiting for a new context to ignite its relevance. Think of the concept of civic humanism, the idea that an individual has a duty to participate in the life of their community. This was the heartbeat of the Italian city-states in the 14th century, driving the construction of public spaces and the support of the arts. Today, we see this same impulse manifesting in our global efforts to protect the environment or advocate for social equity. The language has changed, the scale has expanded, but the core human drive, the desire to belong to a greater whole and to contribute to the common good, remains exactly the same. We are not inventing new human values, we are simply rediscovering them and translating them into the lexicon of our own century. The danger, however, is the illusion of originality. When we forget the past, we risk being trapped in a cycle of reinventing the wheel, often repeating the same errors because we have lost touch with the solutions that were forged centuries ago. But when we treat history as a living dialogue, we gain an incredible advantage. We realize that every challenge we face today, whether it be the tension between technology and nature, or the struggle to find individual meaning in a massive, complex society, has been grappled with before. We are standing on a foundation built by generations of dreamers, thinkers, and rebels. Consider your own life as a repository for these reincarnated ideas. The way you seek truth, the way you value beauty, and the way you strive for autonomy, these are not unique to you. They are the echoes of 1,000 years of human effort. You are the current manifestation of a long, unfolding conversation. By acknowledging this, you are never truly alone. You are part of an unbroken chain of inquiry that stretches back to the first artists who painted on cave walls and forward into a future we can only begin to imagine. As you let yourself drift deeper into this understanding, feel the weight of this connection. The stress of needing to figure it all out by yourself dissolves. You are part of a vast, intelligent process. You are the latest chapter in a story that knows how to survive, how to adapt, and how to find meaning in the chaos. The silence you are entering now is the same silence that the great thinkers of the past sought when they needed to listen to their own inner voice. You are exactly where you are meant to be, participating in a cycle that is ancient, reliable, and profoundly steady. Sink into this continuity. Let the history of these ideas hold you, guide you, and eventually lull you into the peaceful, timeless depth of rest. In the 15th century, the city-states of Florence or Venice were centres of intense social activity, markets, squares, and public debates. Yet the great scholars and artists of that time understood that to create something of lasting value, one had to retreat. They practiced the art of solitude, not as a state of isolation or loneliness, but as a deliberate withdrawal into the inner chambers of the mind. Today, we exist in a state of hyperconnectivity. We carry the voices, opinions, and demands of thousands in our pockets. We are never truly alone, and because of this, we are often never truly ourselves. Think of the modern city, the noise, the screens, the constant feed of information. It mimics the bustle of the Renaissance piazza, but with a relentless 24-hour urgency. In this environment, the crowd is no longer just the people around us, it is the global collective. We are constantly observing, and we are constantly being observed. This creates a paradox. The more we are connected, the more fragmented our attention becomes. We lose the ability to sit with a single thought, to follow a single thread of logic to its end, or to simply exist without the need for external input. History reminds us that every great insight, the laws of motion, the masterpieces of art, the radical shifts in philosophy did not happen in the middle of a crowd. They happened in the quiet hours, in the silence between the heartbeats, when the individual was finally alone with their own consciousness. The solitude of the past was the forge where character was tempered. It was the place where one could distinguish their own voice from the chorus of the society. We must learn to reclaim this, not by leaving the world, but by creating an inner boundary that even the most connected age cannot breach. Consider your own experience. How often do you allow yourself to be truly alone with your thoughts, free from the notification, the opinion, or the judgment of others? This is not an act of withdrawal from the world, but an act of protection for your own humanity. To be alone is to return to the source. It is where you reorganize your priorities, where you heal from the friction of daily life, and where you define who you are when no one is watching. You are not a fragment of the network. You are a whole sovereign entity. As you drift into the quiet now, treat this moment as a sanctuary. You have intentionally stepped out of the flow of the crowd. You have entered the inner room where the noise of the global city cannot reach you. Feel the boundaries of your own self expanding. The need to belong, the need to perform, and the need to connect are all suspended. You are entirely your own. The silence is vast, but it is not empty. It is full of your own presence. You are safe in this solitude, resting in the absolute clarity of your own mind, drifting deeper into the calm, quiet realization that to be alone is to be finally, perfectly at home. The history of human civilization is in many ways a history of borders. We have spent centuries drawing lines on maps, building walls around our beliefs, and defining ourselves by who we are not. Yet if we look closely at the periods of greatest flourishing, the trade routes of the Silk Road, the intellectual hubs of the Renaissance, or the vibrant cosmopolitan centers of today, we see a recurring truth. Progress thrives where cultures collide and ideas are exchanged, not where they are guarded. True civilization is not built by uniformity, but by the complex, often messy, but deeply productive act of coexistence. Consider the early thinkers of the Enlightenment who began to advocate for the right to differ. It was a radical notion in a world accustomed to the iron hand of orthodoxy. They argued that if a society is a house, then the different perspectives within it are not cracks in the foundation, but windows that let in more light. The Renaissance masters themselves operated in a world of fierce rivalries, between city-states, between patrons, and between schools of thought, yet they recognized a higher standard, the pursuit of excellence and the appreciation of beauty, which spoke a language that transcended their local conflicts. Today we face the same challenge on a global scale. We are more interconnected than ever, yet we often feel the urge to retreat into smaller, safer silos. But history provides a steady warning. Every time we choose the safety of the echo chamber over the challenge of the diverse, we stifle the very creativity that drives us forward. The legacy of the humanists was not the victory of one idea over another, but the creation of a common sphere where dialogue could take place. This is the architecture of peace, a structure built on the recognition that your neighbour's truth, while different from your own, contributes to the overall stability of the structure. Think of your own life as an act of hospitality toward the unfamiliar. You are the architect of your own internal world, and you have the power to decide who and what you invite into your thoughts. By practicing tolerance, not just as a political duty, but as a mental discipline, you liberate yourself from the exhausting labor of defense. You no longer have to guard your beliefs like a fortress. You can let them breathe, test them against the brilliance of others, and allow them to evolve. This is the ultimate form of strength, the confidence to engage with the world as it is, vast and varied, without losing your own center. As you drift now, let go of the need for the world to conform to your expectations. Feel the spaciousness of a mind that is inclusive, curious, and profoundly at peace. There is no conflict in this space. There is only the quiet observation of the infinite variety of the human experience. Let the boundaries of yourself dissolve into the calm, accepting dark. You are not a wall, you are a river, receiving and integrating all that flows into you. You are part of the vast, diverse, and beautiful tapestry of humanity, resting in the safety of a global and historical continuity. Everything is as it should be, and you are perfectly, quietly at rest. Throughout our long history, we have been obsessed with the ideal. We sought the perfect proportion in architecture, the flawless syllogism in logic, and the pristine order in our political systems. We treated imperfection as a flaw to be corrected, a bug in the code of the universe. Yet the most profound artistic and philosophical realizations often come when we abandon this quest for the flawless and embrace the incomplete. Think of the kintsugi masters who mend broken pottery with gold, not to hide the fracture, but to honor the history of the object. They teach us that the break is not an end, it is a feature. Consider the life of a great historical figure, not their public triumphs, but their private struggles, their moments of doubt, and their failures. These are the elements that make them real to us. If we removed the vulnerability from the story, we would be left with a statue, not a human being. The Renaissance itself, with all its artistic rigor, was fueled by the restless, messy, and often contradictory passions of its creators. Their work survives not because it was perfect, but because it was deeply, vibrantly human. It captured the tension between the reach for the divine and the reality of the earth. In our modern age, we are constantly curated. We live in a culture that filters out the edges, the smudges, and the quiet failures of our lives. But this obsession with curation is a weight, a constant, exhausting performance. History offers a different path, the acceptance of the wabi-sabi of existence. It is the recognition that things are temporary, incomplete, and imperfect, and that therein lies their grace. When you stop trying to project a flawless image, you finally stop wasting energy on the illusion of control. You begin to appreciate the beauty of the fading light, the wisdom in the wrinkles of age, and the truth in the unfinished project. Think of your own life. The chapters that felt like failures or broken pieces are often the ones that have shaped your character the most. They are the gold in your own kintsugi. By embracing your own imperfections, you gain a sense of liberation that no amount of success can provide. You stop competing with the impossible standard of the perfect and start living in the authentic, fluid, and beautiful reality of the now. You are a work in progress, and that is not a deficit, it is the very definition of your vitality. As you drift now, let go of the pressure to be fixed or polished. Release the desire to have everything aligned or understood. Feel the comfort of being a masterpiece that is still being painted. Let the silence of the room hold your vulnerabilities with kindness. You are not a final product. You are a living, evolving, and beautifully flawed mystery. The world does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. Sink into the softness of this truth. Allow yourself to be unfinished, to be uncertain, and to be simply fully at rest. If we look back across the vast expanse of human history, we often romanticize the great discoveries, the moments when the light of knowledge seemingly conquered the darkness of ignorance. But a more careful study reveals something far more interesting. The most significant turning points in history were not triggered by finding the final answer, but by asking a question that no one had dared to ask before. The scientist who asks "Why does the apple fall?" is more important than the one who simply records that it does. The artist who asks what lies beneath the surface of the skin is the one who transforms the history of painting. Knowledge is not a closed book. It is a question that never ceases to be asked. Think of the medieval mind which lived in a world where the truth was considered absolute and fixed by divine mandate. There was no need for inquiry because everything was already known. Then came the Renaissance, and with it the seismic shift towards skepticism, experimentation, and the belief that the universe was a puzzle that we were meant to solve. This was the birth of the modern spirit, the comfort with being uncertain. We learned that the moment we believe we have reached the end of inquiry, we have actually arrived at the beginning of stagnation. The survival of our civilization has always depended on our willingness to remain beginners. In our contemporary age, we are obsessed with the instant answer. We have algorithms that provide solutions before we even fully articulate our doubts. We are conditioned to fear the unknown, to crave the satisfaction of a resolved state. Yet history warns us that this addiction to resolution is dangerous. It narrows our focus and blinds us to the nuances of reality. True wisdom, the kind that guided the thinkers of the Enlightenment and the pioneers of the scientific age, is the capacity to sit in the tension of a question without feeling the urgent need to kill it with a premature conclusion. Consider your own journey through these parts we have shared. Did you find a single definitive answer to the meaning of existence? Likely not. Instead, you found more questions, more layers of history, and more ways to wonder about your own place in the flow of time. This is not a failure of our journey, it is its success. To be truly awake is to remain in a state of perpetual inquiry. By embracing the unknown, you are not admitting weakness, you are claiming the freedom to explore, to change your mind, and to grow. The mystery is not an obstacle, it is the landscape of your life. As you drift tonight, release the need to solve, to categorize, or to explain your existence. Let the questions float in the air around you, unburdened by the need for an answer. Feel the expansion that comes with not knowing. There is a profound, quiet power in being a mystery even to yourself. Let go of the tight grip of certainty and sink into the vast, open space of inquiry. You are not a vessel that needs to be filled with facts. You are an eye that is constantly seeing, a mind that is constantly wondering, and a spirit that is perfectly content to exist within the beautiful, unending mystery of the present. Drift deep, where the questions dissolve into the silence, and all that remains is the simple, peaceful act of being. We have travelled across the centuries, from the dawn of conscious thought to the digital frontiers of the present. We have explored the cathedrals of stone and the architecture of the mind, the rigidity of logic and the wild expanse of the romantic heart. We have seen how empires rise and fall, how ideas are born and reincarnated, and how the individual stands as the final sovereign witness to it all. Now, as we reach the edge of this long narrative, we find that the final destination is not a grand truth at the end of time, but the very place where we began, this moment, right here, right now. History is a heavy tapestry, rich with the echoes of millions of lives, but to carry it all, to feel the weight of every century and the pressure of every discovery, is to forget that the tapestry was woven for you to stand upon, not to carry on your shoulders. The ultimate lesson of our journey is the art of letting go. Just as the seasons of history have turned from light to dark, from growth to decay, your own life is a cycle that needs the space of the void to renew itself. You are not the history you have studied, you are the one who is currently experiencing it. Consider the silence that remains when the stories cease. It is not an empty silence, it is a canvas of absolute peace. The space where the I, that constant observing presence, can finally rest. You have explored the depths of the past so that you could realize the fullness of the present. All the thinkers, all the artists, and all the dreamers we have invoked have only ever been trying to lead you back to this. The simple, profound ability to be aware, to be kind, and to be quiet. As you prepare to slip into the deep, final rest of this journey, release the narrative, let the names of the eras, the lessons of the philosophers, and the complexities of the world dissolve into the dark, velvety background of your own consciousness. You do not need to remember what we have discussed. The essence of it is already woven into the fabric of your being. You are a complete, whole, and perfectly significant part of the universe. The history of the species is safe, the future is vast and unwritten, and you are exactly where you need to be. Everything has been said, and everything is now still. The weight of the world has fallen away, the urgency of the day has surrendered to the rhythm of your breath. Feel yourself sinking, deeper and deeper, into the calm, endless sea of your own existence. There is nothing to do, nothing to prove, and nowhere else to go. You are not a fragment of the past or a project of the future. You are the present in all its stillness, all its beauty, and all its peace. Breathe in the silence, breathe out the story. Sleepy History with Kevin is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.